Alright, hey there everybody. We are back today to continue on the advanced chapter or advanced puzzles of the Woodpecker method course. We have 68 puzzles remaining, is what I see. So we're going to try to knock out about half or more than half of them today, finish them up tomorrow. We will be done with cycle number 1 after tomorrow, and we will get right into it. So we are picking up on puzzle number, I think it's 1061. Let me scroll down to see if that's correct. I believe so. 1061. So we will hit the learn button and we will get right into it here. Hello, Torty Ritz. See you in the chat. Okay, whites move on this one. What do we do here? So king is a little bit exposed. Undefended rook on on f8. Undefended pawn. We've got a couple of checks to consider. Hey there, Thomas. Nice to see you again. Queen a8 check is kind of my first instinct. Black can block with their queen on b8. And then the question is, what next after that? Or do we have a follow-up? Now that I'm looking at that, now I think I might actually, hold on. I think it might be rook to e7, which kind of just jumped into being a possible move in my mind. So rook to e7, yeah, nice to see you as well. Rook to e7, if the queen takes on e7, then queen a8 check, king is forced to c7, then queen a7 check for the skewer. To protect the king, you have to, or to protect the queen, you have to go to d8, and then queen to b8 is actually just checkmate. So after rook to e7, he can't take the rook. He'd have to play queen to b8, I guess, to keep the a8 square covered, but that, the fact of, if we get the rook to e7 for free, I think that's just fantastic for us. I don't know what the follow-up would be exactly, but there's no way that this can't be the best move. Rook to d1 check, interesting. Okay, fair enough. It's always these puzzles where they throw a move at you that, I mean, maybe I should have seen this as a possibility, but okay, let's make sure we figure out what to do here. My first instinct is to take with the king, because you kind of leave the bishop and the queen in the same spots. So king takes, queen takes rook, queen a8 check, king c7, queen a7 check, king d8, there's still b8 mate, so the king will have to go to d4, or d6. You can take the a6 pawn at the very least, and I think if you have a bishop plus 3 extra pawns, it should beat the rook out, even if I was to trade queens somehow. So then part of the question is, does it make any sense to take the rook with anything other than the king? Taking with the bishop feels unuseful. I don't see any world where the bishop on d1 would be useful. And taking with the queen kind of just takes you away from the a8 square. So I think you take with the king, and now you make one of these two checks. I assume that checking on a8 is better, because it's a bit more forcing. You force black to play king c7. And then I think you can check on a7. And then if we wanted to draw, we can check on d4, and then king goes back to c7. I think we can draw there, but... oh, hold on. No, we can just checkmate here, right? King b6, king e5, king d4, king e6, and then bishop b3. Okay, we do have a checkmate here. Yeah, white mates after king e5, check, check. Well, checkmate, because the g4 pawn covers the f5 square. Okay, pretty happy about the start. Rook e7 is a good move to find. Okay, our move here is white. Critical knight, undefended pawn, possibly an important square on h7. Bishop is attacked once and defended once. Queen's undefended. Generally like to kind of, if nothing is immediately jumping out at me, I tend to like to figure out how to use, or figure out the options that are available. First instinct is to take the bishop, maybe? king takes back, queen g3 check, king has to go to h8. Well, I will say, I don't really like having the instructions on, but the instructions do say that the seemingly bad bishop on b2 can become a key attacker, so probably this bishop is involved somehow. Whether it goes to a3 to hit the queen, or if it goes to c1 to hit the h6 pawn. I don't think it's going to be useful on this diagonal, just because there's too much, there's a bit too much stuff in the way. Probably it's going to go to c1 to help attack h6 at some point, is my feeling. But the knight on d2 is also blocking things at the same time. Okay, so hold on. Let's go back to thinking of specific moves. I don't think queen takes h6 makes any sense. Bishop takes back. We don't have rook g8. Queen to d3 threatens h7, but black can take on f6, and that feels like it kind of stops that idea. Bishop a3 can come in useful if I need to pull the queen away for some reason, but probably not right away. Okay, so rook takes g7 is still my first thought. King takes, queen g3, king h8, queen f4. Black plays queen f8, I take the knight, which is good. Probably takes on f6. I take back, queen f8. Feels like we're running out of firepower there. What are we gonna do? What are we going to do? It could be some kind of knight e4, like d2 knight goes to e4, pawn takes, bishop c1, trying to play rook takes g7, queen h6. Bishop a3 then. In the variation I mentioned. Might have to remind me which variation you're referring to. Is that rook takes g7, queen g3, and then you're saying bishop a3, or? Oh, are you talking about queen f4, knight takes f6, pawn takes f6, queen f8, maybe? Ah, I see. Bishop a3. He does have queen to g8 with check. Queen to g8 comes with check there, I think. And then once we deal with the check, maybe he plays queen to g6 to protect the h-pawn, or king h7 to protect the pawn. Definitely important to keep this bishop a3 move in mind, but I'm not sure if it works in that specific spot because of the check. But maybe in some other move order that could be useful. Like, what if we did? Let's change the moves around, right? Let's say we did rook takes g7, king takes g7, queen g3 check, king h8. I guess you don't want to play bishop a3 yet, because queen takes, queen f4, they still play queen f8. So what are we doing? What are we doing? Yeah, then maybe bishop a3 first or something. But then if he takes it, he can come back to f8 afterwards, I think. Like, queen takes a3, queen f4, queen f8. And he protects h6. Yeah, I feel like it's important. I feel like this bishop a3 move is important. I'm just trying to figure out what moment to use it. It could also be a bishop c1, queen takes h6 idea. But I don't know how easy that is to accomplish when the knight on d2 is in the way. Hold on. I don't know if this is the answer. Hold on. Is this an idea? So what if I did knight e4? Let's say I did the d2 knight to e4. So this is what I'm thinking for a moment. Knight e4. If black doesn't have to do this, but if they took the knight, then I go rook takes g7, king takes g7, bishop c1. Okay, it's coming together a little bit here. Bishop c1, threatening queen takes h6 mate. If the king moves, we take h6 and it's still mate. So knight takes on f6 there. Queen takes h6 check, king g8, take with the pawn, threaten g7 mate. Black has to play queen f8. We go back and we check on g5. King goes to h7 or h8. We check on h5 with the queen. King goes back to g8. But then we play bishop to h6. And if the queen moves, we go back to g-file and checkmate on g7. And if we do knight e4, pawn takes, oh man, those arrows are bad. Knight e4 takes, rook takes g7, king takes g7, bishop c1. If black tries rook h8 to protect the pawn, then we go queen to g3 check, king f8, bishop takes h6, rook takes, and queen g8 mate. Now the problem with all of this, yeah, that was the variation I was just saying. Rook h8, queen g3, and bishop takes h6, right. Now the issue with all of this might be, hold on. Actually, maybe that's not an issue. I was thinking maybe black could just take on f6 at the start. But if black takes on f6 at the start, the problem, those are bad arrows. The problem is I'm trying to get the bishop off of the h6, man. I'm trying to get the bishop off of the h6 square anyways. That looks pretty strong, actually. Knight e4, pawn takes, then you take on g7. Now, does it matter which move order we do? What if we took g7, then played knight e4? Does that change anything? Or is that pretty much the same position? I have to imagine, okay, as we know with the Woodpecker method puzzles, sometimes there are multiple ways to get the multiple, roads that lead to Rome, so to speak. But I do want to kind of know from my own calculation if it matters which move order. Do I play knight e4 or do I take the bishop then knight e4? I kind of feel like knight e4 is the safer move, but it does, we're not really threatening anything with knight e4, not just yet. Like maybe black plays knight f8 or something. I don't think knight f8 works, but it's at least a move, to consider. I think the downside of taking the bishop first is if we take the bishop then play knight e4, maybe then black plays rook h8, bishop c1, and then like, I don't even know what they did there either, I guess. Maybe knight c4 since we have bishop a3 options as well. Maybe. I think the slight drawback to knight c4 is that black can then take on f6 a little bit easier, I think. Because if the knight's on c4 and then black plays knight takes f6, and then pawn takes, they can take with the queen, and they don't lose the protection of the h6 pawn. Whereas I think if the knight's on e4 and they take, they're going to get the bishop pulled away from the h6 pawn. So I think knight e4 is going to be necessary to keep the knight protected. Again, I'm not sure if it's taking the bishop then knight e4 or if it's knight e4 right away. My guess is that it's knight e4 right away, but I'm not 100% sure why rook takes wouldn't work. It could be that both work, but it's also pretty likely that only one works. I'm going to go with knight e4 here. Okay, it says alternatives, so maybe both do work. So if that's the case, then I guess it's rook takes g7 first, right? Oh. There's three we found two alternatives. There's the third one that does work. So again, this is a bit annoying because all of these work somehow. Apparently there must be something even better that I'm just kind of overlooking somehow. Is it bishop a3? Bishop a3, queen takes a3, then rook takes g7 maybe? I don't think it's that, though. I think that black can bring the queen back to defend. I don't think it's bishop a3. It could be bishop c1 right at the start, but then I think black takes on f6. So probably not that. I mean, the only other move I can think of other than these three, or other than these two, is to play bishop a3. But I feel like that's not the right answer. Okay, at least I'm glad to know it's not the right answer. Okay, so if it's not knight e4 and rook takes g7, which were two alternatives, then what is it? Is it bishop c1 at the start? I don't think so. I don't think you want to give black the chance to take on f6. Your guess is as good as mine. Okay. What else is even available here? Like knight h5 or something? Knight h5, bishop f8. Maybe knight h5, I guess. Yeah. Hey, Ernesto. Knight h5, if rook g8, we take g7, then h6. So, I mean, we're happy about that. But bishop f8, kind of... I'm not really sure what the follow-up is there. After queen f8, we could play king h1. Oh, and you're still trying the bishop a3 idea, I think you're referring to. But I think that was all started with, I think that was all started with rook takes g7, I thought. Or knight to e4, and apparently it's not one of those moves at the beginning. Knight to b1? Rook g7, king g7, queen g3, king h8, queen f4, knight f6, e6, queen f8, king h1. I think we've already found out that rook takes g7 is not the right move for whatever reason, or at least there's a better move available. But even in that position that you're referencing, king h1, maybe black plays queen g8, and then they put the queen on the h7 or g6 squares. So queen g8 anyways, if we take h6, queen h7 blocks the check, and I think black is surviving. And if we don't take h6, they're going to go to g6 or h7 and protect. Or even king h7. Maybe king h7 also guards the h6 pawn. It's very close to working, but for whatever reason, the best answer does not involve rook takes g7 at the start anyways. Okay, I'm going to try knight h5. I feel like I've already found the alternatives. Knight h5 is another alternative. Maybe it is knight c4. Maybe you mentioned this earlier. Maybe it is knight c4, Thomas, but I still think black takes on f6. I thought that was the issue. So I kind of don't think it's knight c4, but... Oh, it is knight c4. Okay. Alright. Well, you were the one that pointed out knight c4 earlier, Thomas. Maybe now bishop a3? But I don't... Why would this be better than the other stuff we looked at? I don't feel like there was any need to give black this opportunity. Bishop a3, queen d8, or rook takes g7. I don't know why this would be the best way to do things. Do we take f6? Do we play bishop a3 first? I can't imagine why bishop a3 first would be bad. And apparently there's no further explanation, and white's just, oh, well, okay, if he goes to d7, that's silly. Why would the queen not go to d8? I guess queen to d8, there's knight to d6? I guess. Okay, I'm really curious as... Okay, also full points for similar solutions. So it says rook takes g7 and then knight to e4 also works. Okay, I'm happy to see that that works. It does say knight to e4 on move number 1 also works. If we back up to this. Oh, I think it's referring to knight. I think the second variation is referring to knight to e4 without rook takes g7. It says don't play like in the game, though. Do not play like in the game. Apparently, white played bishop a3, queen takes a3, knight takes d7. I think this is referring to the case before the rook took the bishop, though, because I'm pretty sure they've got the move stuff messed up here. Yeah, essentially, like, white lost the game. It also said knight h5 work. Okay, so this is a position where there's like a bunch of moves that win, and it wants you to find knight c4, I guess. Look, knight h5 is best. Oh, now it says rook takes g7. Now it says knight to e4. Yeah, so these moves that we were focusing on are even better than knight to c4. What does it say is knight c4? I mean, it's still good for white, but it's. I mean, okay, we had the answer. We had this sequence. Bishop c1, right? Okay, we had that correct. And then this, and then this, and then this check, and this check, and this bishop h6 move, and then white is for sure winning here. I mean, black can stop the mate, but white is much better here. Queen versus rook and knight. You can check, pick up a pawn, eat all the pawns, push the b pawn. Okay, so I would say that we solved this one. I mean, okay, Thomas, you had the knight c4 move, which was the technical answer, but it looks like all of these moves would have also worked. The annoying part is when we go back through cycle 2 and 3 and 4, I have to remember that knight c4 is the move that they want, and not these other moves that are also good. So kind of makes the future cycles a bit tougher, but okay. I'm happy with our calculation there. I'm happy that we got all the answers. Is pretty much what it came down to. We got all of the correct answers. Oh, can we check queen d8? My apologies. Yeah, let's go back and check it. Yeah, fair enough. We didn't look at that one. I'll check it real quick. So it was knight c4, take... Oh, sorry. Knight c4, this capture. Bishop a3, queen d8. And then, yeah, it looks like knight to d6. We're threatening the fork on f7. And I think it's hard for black to protect this f7 and to keep the knight protected. Like if they go queen d7 now, we take on f6, and the bishop is getting pulled off of the h6 pawn. I think that's kind of the issue. If he doesn't take, I guess he could go knight bishop f8, but you can take the rook, I guess. Yeah, knight d6 is the key move here, and then black has trouble dealing with all of these threats. Yeah, it feels like the other. I won't say that knight e4 and rook takes g7 is easier. I don't necessarily think it's easier, but it's more aiming at the king. It's a little easier in that regard. Like once you see maybe a bishop c1 idea and you know you need to get the knight out of the way, then knight to e4 becomes a possibility. Rook takes g7 is always kind of the first move I was thinking about, but figuring out how to incorporate this bishop was the key. Okay. I already solved this one, so we'll just go back. Okay, we'll get back into what we were on. Yeah, I like knight e4 a bit more as well. Yeah, I agree. Okay. My first impression on this one is probably knight to e4 here as well. But this time it's knight e4 from the black side of things. So knight e4 hitting the rook. If the pawn takes, we get the rook. Probably some queen takes h2 follow-up. King moves, take on g3, open up the d file. That's my first instinct. Essentially, white has to take the knight if we do that. If he plays rook f1, we take on g3 and just completely blast through. If he goes rook g2, we take on f3 and we win a pawn with a fantastic position. So knight e4, he has to take us, as far as I can tell. He could try bishop f1, I guess. Bishop f1 could be a little annoying, but I don't think it changes a ton. Maybe we go queen h5, and then we still take f2, h2, stuff like that. I think the big issue for white is that like these pieces are kind of far from protecting the king. And so it feels like we've just got enough firepower that we should be able to just kind of sacrifice something. It could also be knight g4 at the start. Actually, maybe that's even... That's definitely a consideration as well. Knight g4 or knight e4. I have a feeling it's knight e4, because I think we want the e5 knight to hit the f3 pawn. If we go knight to g4, maybe white goes rook to g2, which is a little annoying since the e3 pawn is covered. So I'm still leaning towards knight e4, pawn takes, take the rook, king takes, queen takes h2. I assume the king has to run, so king e1 or something. We can't take the e4 pawn yet because white takes our rook on d1. So we play queen takes g3 check, king goes to d2. I guess then you take on e4 with check. King goes to c2. And the question is, do we have a follow-up there? And I'm not so sure if we do. Rook c8, knight blocks on c3, and I think we run out of steam a bit. Maybe. So... got a little bit of an energy drink here, but as well. I did an interview already 2 hours ago with Dr. John's chess clinic on YouTube, so I've been well awake for a couple of hours. All right, knight e4, pawn takes, take the rook, king takes, queen takes h2, I assume, king e1. How do we prevent the king from getting to the d2 square? Is there a way to do that? Oh, wait, can we go knight c4? Knight c4, bishop takes. Knight e4, take, check there. There's also knight f3 check. There's some knight coming to f3 or c4 to cover the d2 square. The ideas are there. The ideas are there, but how do I make it work? Knight e4, take, check there. I think that's kind of the pausing point, is after queen takes h2, king e1. What do we do there? It's hard to incorporate the a7 bishop because the e3 pawn is pinned. If we check on g1 or h1 or g3, the king will go to d2 and the e3 pawn is pinned, is defended by the queen. There is knight c4 check at the right time, or knight f3 check at the right time. There is bishop f3 first. I don't think it works to do it first. What do we do? Hello, Traveling with Mickey. Nice visualization. Thank you, thank you. I'm also kind of wondering if I'm going down the rabbit hole on knight e4 too much, but it just really feels like the right move. If it's not knight e4, knight g4 is kind of the only other move I'm considering And I don't think it's knight g4 because of rook g2. So, unless I'm missing something there, I don't think so. I would like knight g4 to work because I'd like to play knight e4 instead of knight c4 to keep the d2 square covered, but I don't think it works. I don't think knight g4 works because of rook g2. So knight e4 is kind of the only move I'm looking at. And I feel like in a game, I don't know, maybe I would think a few more minutes and just kind of go for it. The thing is, it's just screaming out to be played whether this was a puzzle or not. So I think it's knight e4, take, check. Oh, and the puzzle just kind of stops here. The instructions said that this position can be evaluated as generally winning due to white's horrible coordination, so you don't need to see further. I don't know if that's exactly true. I mean, I got to this position in my mind and I wasn't 100% sure if queen takes g3 or pawn takes e4 at the right time. I think in general you're picking up a bunch of pawns and the king is super weak, so I like I said, I think in a game I'd go for this and then kind of work it out from here. It looks like what was played, was rook f8 played? I don't think rook f8 was played. It says he played queen takes g3 and then d4, but d4 is not winning because white can run away, and somehow white won. Black ended up winning the game, but white is actually winning in this position since the d-pawn's pinned. Apparently a better move option is rook f8. And yeah, now white has a hard time dealing with like knight f3 check, or, you know, involving a new piece in the attack is a big problem. Knight c4 check works here, takes this, and then once the king takes the knight, you take the bishop, and black's in good shape. Okay, so I had the right answer, but the puzzle kind of cuts off a little bit early. I'm a little curious real quick if there's multiple good moves at this point. There probably is. Rook f8 is winning, queen h1 is winning, b5 is winning, which is kind of a weird one. I would probably have played queen takes g3, which is also still quite good. But the problem is, see, if you play queen takes g3, you kind of have to see this rook c8 move, which is not a terribly easy move to see. It feels very weird to move the rook away from the file that the king is on. And then I guess the problem for white is, how do they move any of these pieces? Pretty much none of their pieces can move without giving up some kind of protection. Like the king can't move, the knight can't develop, the bishop can't move, the queen is stuck protecting e3. But yeah, I mean, if rook to c8 is the only winning move, that's a tough one to find. Okay, tough puzzle. Tough to figure out. I think from this position it's tough. I don't think the beginning was all that tough. I think this position is the tougher part to figure out what you would do here. Okay. Let's see. What do we do? I feel like I might have seen this one somewhere. I think it's bishop to e7. And then if the rook takes, you check on the back rank and win the queen. And the problem is black kind of has a hard time dealing with rook to d8 and bishop takes f6. And if you get to take on f6, then you can take on f7 and blast through on the king side. So I'm pretty sure it's bishop e7. This is a good question here. Do you take on f6 or do something different? I feel like you have to take on f6. And then probably, I don't want to take with the knight and get the queen to take. Probably I go, I don't know, knight to d7 is my instinct to hit the f6 pawn. Maybe knight g4 is also pretty good to force one of these defenses. Rook to d7, I think we just lose the knight. I would think knight to d7, but knight g4. Okay, knight g4 says alternative. What do we do here? Knight takes f7, queen takes f7. I feel like that stops our attack. I don't think it's rook to d7 because we lose the knight on e5. What else are we doing here then? Because our knight is being attacked, so we need to do something with the knight. Knight g6? I mean, you're not really threatening anything with knight g6 is the problem. Your knight probably should not be captured, but knight g6 isn't really attacking anything. Okay, it's not knight g6, good to know. Okay, what is it then? I feel like in a game I play knight g4, but it said that was an alternative. So if I'm not going knight g4, I gotta move the knight, I think. I don't think it's knight takes f7 because of queen takes, unless I'm missing something. Knight g6 doesn't really threaten anything. Knight d7 it said was not correct already. I can't imagine the answer is just knight back to f3. I think white's better. Queen e4 makes a lot of sense. Attack the rook first. Okay, fair enough. You can make it. You can kind of one-up black's threat. Queen e4, rook goes to a7. Then our queen is more active and can create more threats. Okay, that's a fair point. Right, you get the queen into the attack, absolutely. Queen e4, rook a7. Then what do we do there? We can check on g4. We can play knight g4. I mean, pretty much queen e4 and rook a7, that insertion of moves is just a net positive for white. There's no way that that helps black. It helps guard the 7th rank a tiny bit, but I can't imagine that the queen on e4 is not helpful in the attack. I think I would play that without a lot of calculation. I know in a perfect world for all of these puzzles, that we figure them out all the way from move number 1, but there are also plenty of situations in a game where I wouldn't necessarily calculate all the way to the end of the game from the starting position, because some of the moves, it's kind of like there's no way that move is bad. Like queen e4, there's no way that move is bad. Like, if they have to play rook a7, there's no way that's bad. Yeah, maybe rook d7 at the right time. We still have to be concerned about queen takes e5 or pawn takes e5. And the knight also covers d7 right now. Maybe now we play queen g or knight g4 or queen g4. Let's see. Queen g4 check, king h8. I don't really see the follow-up. Yeah, I don't exactly see the follow-up after that. And then our knight still has to move probably. Oh, hold. No, that wouldn't work. I was thinking queen g4, king h8, rook d8, but then black takes on d8 a few times, and the a7 rook guards f7, so that doesn't really work. Queen e4, queen g4, king h8. I'm not really seeing the follow-up there. I feel like knight g4 now. Yeah, okay, so it is just knight g4 now, and your queen is involved in the attack, which makes all of this a bit easier to go for. Okay. So the queen e4 move there, Thomas, was a good one. Yeah, very nice. So this was good. This was good. Okay, I mean, knight g4 is still plus, 2.7 right away. But queen e4, involving queen e4 before knight g4 is definitely just better than playing knight g4 right away. Also, if you go knight g4, black can play queen f4, which is a little bit trickier. Apparently queen e4 here now is good, because you're doing this tactic. which is pretty cool. Okay. Alright, generally happy with that one. Knight g4 right away is not the best move, but it's still very good. Queen e4 is definitely a good insertion, and then you go knight g4. Black doesn't have the queen f4 defense. Yeah, exactly. You take out queen f4. Exactly. Okay, next one. Okay, our queen is hit. Otherwise, knight f6 would have been like an interesting idea. Alright, so we don't have any good checks. I don't think we're playing queen takes g7 check. The threat on our queen is pretty massive, and our knight on c6 is being hit. So I think we have to move the queen. We don't really have a way to counterattack black's queen. We don't really have a way to threaten checkmate, as far as I can tell. I think we have to move the queen. Knight e5 almost works. For example, if knight e5, they take the queen. I guess it does not really, though. Yeah, okay, never mind. Queen e5, knight e5 doesn't work. We lose the queen, and then there's no like knight f6 follow-up. Okay, so not knight e5. I'm thinking it's queen h4. They take our knight on c6, and then we play knight to f6. And then I don't know how black protects the h7 pawn. So queen h4, knight takes c6, knight f6. If they take the knight, queen takes f6, we mate on g7 next. If they push the h-pawn, then we have queen takes h6 check, pawn takes rook g8's mate. How else do they guard the h7 pawn? I don't think there's another way to protect it. So queen h4, they can't take the knight on c6, but if they can't take the knight on c6, then it's got to be just a good move, right? If their best move is some kind of defensive move, then we can play knight back to e5 later, and then we're just very happy about that position. So I think queen h4, as long as I see that the knight can't be captured, then I think I play queen h4 relatively quickly here. Okay, and then we had this, this, and this. Okay, good. Yeah, some of the variations here point out other moves black could try, like h6, but then we still play knight f6 anyways. There's also some rook takes g7 tricks at the right time, and white eventually wins the queen. But okay, I don't think that was the biggest, most important thing. I think once you recognize that the knight's not free on c6, then I think it all clicks together pretty easily. Okay, not too bad of one there. Rook f5 and then take f7 looks pretty good. If the queen goes to c4, you play knight to e5, and then you still take f7. So, hold on. Rook f5, queen c4, knight e5, queen e6. If rook takes f7, we lose the knight, and the bishop is defended. So we have to be a little careful there. We don't have any great checks. Rook d7 check and rook takes c5 do nothing. We're not taking on c5, I don't think. We can attack the bishop. We can attack the queen. We can attack the undefended g7 pawn. Rook e1 is also a move to consider at the start. As I think it's rook e1 or rook f5 that kind of feels like the idea. Knight e5 is also a possibility, but maybe bishop d6 kind of blocks that out decently well. I'm not sure. Or even just like one of the rooks to d8 or something. Knight e5, rook d8, something along those lines. So I'm leaning towards rook f5. I'm assuming queen c4 to guard the f7 pawn. Then I'm thinking knight e5 to hit the queen and the pawn. Queen e6. I can take the f7 pawn with the knight, but it doesn't feel like it's that great once black plays rook f8. I think my knight is actually a bit pinned there. I can play rook e1 after queen e6, but then black plays f6, and I feel like that kind of just pushes us backwards, even though I feel like that's still a very good position for white. Rook f5, queen c4. You could throw in rook e1 first there, if you wanted to hit the bishop. Oh, and then rook e4. Oh, hold on. That's probably what it is. Rook f5, queen c4, rook e1, hit the bishop. But once the bishop is defended or moves, then we have rook to e4. Black has to move the queen to b5, and then you can take f7. And I don't think you have to calculate too much further past that. It just looks good for white. So I think I go rook f5. Oh. Okay, rook f5 is not the best move. Interesting. Maybe it's rook e1 first, then rook f5. Maybe that move order. Oh, hold on. I'm being not very smart about things. I was missing that black could play bishop f6. So I was missing rook f5, queen c4, rook e1. He can play bishop f6 to block off the attack on f7. Okay. I missed that. But then rook e1 right away is probably the move. Rook e1 and then rook e4 or rook f5 or something like that. Like, if rook e1 and bishop f6, then rook e4 traps the queen. If rook e1 and bishop d6, then rook f5 works because you fork the queen and the pawn. If the queen goes to c4, then rook e4, and the queen gets pushed off of f7. Okay, I think you have to start with rook e1, then rook f5, then rook e4, and then take the pawn. Okay. So I got the move order mixed up there. I was missing that after rook f5, queen c4, rook e1, there was bishop f6. So it is. I think this one is very important to get the correct order of moves. Let me just check that. Yeah, rook f5, queen c4, rook e1. It's going to be bishop f6. Yeah, bishop f6 spoils what I was going for because now you don't have the f7 pawn that you can capture here in this position. Whereas if you start with rook e1, black can't play bishop f6 because now rook e4 takes... The bishop took away the escape square and now black's queen is trapped. Black has to move the bishop or deal with it some other way, but then rook f5, then you have rook f5 and rook c4, or rook e4. So like, oops, sorry. Then you do it this way, and then you pick up a pawn once the queen moves away. Okay. I'm happy about the right idea, but yeah, I did get the incorrect move order. You want to do rook e1 first. I was missing this bishop f6 idea. Okay. Okay. Black to move here. We can trade the rooks. We can take on f2, which I don't think is the correct move. We can take on b5. We can play knight to b3. They're threatening to take our rook on d2, of course. Oh, hold on. I think I see it here. So I think we trade the rooks, and then we take on a4. We trade rooks, we take on a4. If the rook takes a4, we have rook takes b5, we win a pawn. If the bishop takes a4, we play b5, and then we take the bishop because it's pinned, and we also win a pawn. I think we have to trade rooks first, of course, but then we do this, this. Okay, I'm pretty sure king f6 is the way to go. Oh. King d6? King d6 feels very weird to leave these pawns. I really have no clue why you'd go to d6 over f6, honestly. But I guess it's king to d6. Black has good winning chances and won the game. Less strong is the passive king f6. Endgames are generally more about activity than protecting some irrelevant pawn on the wing. Okay, fair enough. Maybe I'm being a little overly defensive with the king going to f6. King to d6. You go after the d pawn, you push the b pawn, and black is in good shape here. Okay, happy about that. Okay, we must have some checkmate around the corner here somehow. How do we do it? Bishop h3 check, rook e5 check, I mean, rook e5 check, and then we can take the knight on c5. Looks pretty good. I don't see why that would be not winning. I mean, maybe our own king is a little unsafe, actually. Maybe there's some rook e8 check, knight d3 check, something weird. The tricky part here is if we go bishop h3, king f4, we don't really have another check, and black is threatening knight to c2, knight to d3, bishop to d3 type of stuff. So I don't think it's bishop h3. If we play rook e5 check and they play king f4, we still don't really have a great check follow-up, unfortunately. Rook e5 check, king f4, rook takes c5, rook h8 to e8 check. If we go king f2, we do have the d2 and d3 squares covered. So maybe that's okay for us, but it feels very, very shaky to give black all that activity. He gets a lot of piece activity with the... And our own king is not the safest in the world. What if we start with f4? Because the problem with bishop h3 check king f4 is that the f3 pawn is blocking off rook f1 checkmate. So if we start with f4, we are threatening bishop h3, king takes pawn, rook f1 mate. How does he deal with that if we play f4? He can play knight to e4 to block, but that doesn't really change much. Bishop h3, take the pawn, rook f1. Our knight on c4 covers e5, and we give mate. Black doesn't have any great checks of their own. They can put a knight on the d3 square, but I don't think it actually changes the mate. f4. They could play bishop h7 to open up the g6 square, but then we still play bishop h3, king g6, and f5 is a pretty funny mate. I think it's f4. Yeah. I think it's f4. And it's not f4. How is it not f4? What am I missing here? Looks good to me. What am I missing with f4? How is that not mating? Really? What am I missing with f4? I don't know. I really don't. I really don't know why that's not mating. I must be missing something. Okay, it's not the answer. That's all I know now. But I don't know why not. Rook e5 is the other move I was thinking about. But it feels very shaky to do rook e5 and take the c5 knight. Maybe it's rook e5 and something else afterwards. But the problem is, once the king is on the f4 square... Well, I thought f4, knight e4. I thought bishop h3 anyways, because it covers e6. And then if he takes on f4, rook f1 check, our knight on c4 covers the e5 square, and we do give mate there. Our rook on e3 covers g3. Yeah, I don't know why f4 doesn't win. I'm actually more... I'm almost more curious about that than what the actual answer is at this point. I must be missing something with f4. I don't know what it is, though. Yeah, I have no clue why f4 doesn't win. Okay. I'm going to try rook e5. Okay. Beats me. I don't know what the answer is then. The problem is if we don't play f4, if we check the king and it goes to the f4 square, it's really hard to hit the king on f4. Neither of our knights can get to the d3 or g2 or h3 squares easily. We don't have a rook checking on the f file or the e4 square because those are covered or blocked. Okay, I mean, the only other move I was thinking about was bishop h3 at the start. Okay, I'm really at a loss. I'm at a loss on this one. Maybe it's rook e7 with the idea of knight e3 check? Something like that, maybe? But I don't even think that's mate. Knight e3, king f4, knight g2, king... As weird as it looks, even king g3 or king back to f5, that's not mate? I don't know on this one. I still don't know what's wrong with f4. I have no clue on why f4 is not winning. Is it like f4, king g4 or something crazy? There's no way. Bishop h3, king takes h4, bishop f5 is mate. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go rook e7. What is it? Knight to b7. Okay. Hold on. I'm looking at what it says about f4. f4 threatens mate, but after king takes f4, rook f3 check, king e4. I wasn't going to play rook f3 check right away, though. I was going to play bishop h3. And then I did not see... Oh, bishop h3, there's bishop d3? Did I just underestimate what happens if he just takes the pawn? Maybe. Very annoying. Okay, apparently knight b7. Because this pulls the knight away from protecting e4. Because now bishop h3 check, king f4, rook e4 should be a mate. Okay. Rook to d4? I think you have knight d6 check now or something like that. Or bishop h... I don't know. What is the idea? What is the idea? We're a little slow starting today. I mean, we've been going at it for about 45-ish minutes, and we've done about 7 puzzles, which is not a great speed of things. Okay, I'm spitballing here a little bit. Yeah, I don't exactly know, to be honest with you. King f2. Okay, that's tough. King f2. You're threatening rook e5. What are you threatening? I guess you're threatening knight d6? Okay. You're guarding c4 at the very least, and this is the best way to play, apparently. Is this what was played in the game? I mean, Kasparov is obviously a beast. And this was a simul. Did he play this way in the game in a simul? That's crazy. For this to be a simul and figure this out. Knight b7, rook d4, king f2, take on c4. The puzzle stops after black making a move. I don't know. Okay. Let's check from the start real quick. Okay, it says f4 is good, but yeah, knight b7 is best. Crazy. Very tough one here. Yeah, black has to take the pawn, because we are threatening this bishop h3, rook f1. I guess I kind of just... Maybe I didn't fully think through that he can actually just take the pawn before the bishop is here. Because if you try bishop h3 now, black has bishop d3 check, which is a big issue. Because you no longer have rook f1 anymore. That's the big problem here. So knight b7 only move. Oh, sorry, it was rook to d4, and then king f2 is the best move. And then it says the best move here is king g3. You don't even take the rook. Wow. King g3, and then if it goes here, knight d6 check, and then... Oh, well, you can just go bishop h3, actually. Bishop h3 is also mating. You essentially just weave this mating net. You just get the king to g3 and play bishop h3. So I guess if that's the case, what's wrong with king f2 right at the start? King f2, black's best move is king f4, which is pretty funny. So you go here, then here. If the king moves up the board, then you can just win a piece since you're protecting. Okay, very, very tough position. Feels like in a game you obviously feel like there's a way to win because the king is so badly placed, but knight b7 on its own is already tough, and then king f2 after rook d4 is tough as well. Yeah, okay, very, very tough, but a good one, I think. I think here you take the knight, and then I think you can play knight c3, which is a cool move. Pawn takes, queen takes, you fork the king and the rook, and then you take the rook. If they don't take the knight and they move the queen away, then you have rook to d1 check. So I think you do this, check, take. Okay. Knight c3 is a bit of a tricky move to see there, but I was able to solve that one pretty quick. Happy about that. Black must defend against a rook invasion on d7 is what it says. I think you can check on h6. If the queen takes, then of course you take the rook on e7, which is good. And if the king moves away to b1, I think you can throw in this really weird looking g5 move. You're breaking the connection of the queen and the rook. We are up a piece right now, so if we can just trade queens, we are winning for sure. And if they capture on g5, we take the rook. If they capture on h6, we take the rook. If they take the queen, we get the queen, and then I think we're up a piece and happy with it. So check, block. Oh, not block. Interesting. So checking was good at the start. But what's the follow-up here now? Oh, probably you can just play rook to d8 and threaten back rank mate. Yeah, there we go. Okay, rook to d6. I think you can just trade the rooks, and then you're just up a piece. Something better, fair enough. What's better than just capturing on d6? I guess the problem is if you trade on d6, your queen is still hit, and then the bishop is hit, so... Is it queen to c6? Maybe it's queen c6. If they take, you get the mate. If they don't take, if they take your bishop, you have queen e4 check, which should mate soon. I think it's queen to c6, actually. And then you take on d6 now. And then you don't want to retreat the knight because you lose the bishop. I think you want to take on d6 and then play some kind of g5. I think now it's still this g5 idea. Queen d1 check first, maybe? Or queen d3 check first? I'm trying to figure out why these g5 moves don't work. Maybe white would just play queen e4 to guard the rook. It feels like a very weird variation. If you don't have a win here, it feels very weird to have sacrificed the knight. There's probably... I mean, you have a draw worst case scenario. You can perpetual check if you like really wanted to for some reason. What do we do? I mean, you can just bring the bishop back and probably you're just in good shape because your bishop is super strong. You can check on d3. This is not really a threat because the rook is hit, so maybe you just take the pawn. You might just take the pawn. Yeah, you just take the pawn. Can't take the bishop without losing the rook. It says g5 here. Oh, wow, where did that come from? Sorry, I don't know where that circumstance was. It says g5 here, rook takes queen, take the queen, take a8. Ah, I missed the sequence. Okay, I see what I missed here. I was trying to figure out why g5 didn't work in this position. But he can take the queen, trade the rooks, and then this move a3, and then rook to d6, and we lose our extra piece due to this fork. Okay, that's a bit tough to see from the starting point. You know, I thought g5 was good here because it blocked off the queen from protecting the rook, but it does have a problem with it. Yeah, rook d8 wasn't terribly hard to find. once we see that g5 isn't working. Queen to c6, like, also not the most difficult move to find. It is weird to me that we kind of just end up in a position with only an extra pawn, considering that we were up a knight at the start, but I guess that's just how it goes sometimes. Queen e4, b3. White lost from a position like this. Okay. Oh, this is a famous game. I'm pretty sure it's bishop or rook takes h6, bishop e6 check, and then you work the queen in with the correct sequence of checks so that you give checkmate. I'm pretty sure this is it. Check. I think it's this check first. Oh, it stops here. You have to check with the right sequence, and you do eventually get the mate. Okay. I don't think rook takes h6 is the hardest move to come up with either. Once you're there's not a whole lot of other move options to consider at the start, quite honestly. Okay. So black's not really threatening a whole lot, right? I mean, okay, he could take the pawn. That's about it. I don't think we take on d6 because rook takes d6 kind of spoils the fun. We lose the knight on b6. But c6 is actually my first thought here. Pawn to c6. If the queen takes, we give mate on e7. If bishop takes, we slow play it with rook a to c1. And then I have no clue what black does to stop rook takes c6. He could try rook to d7, I suppose, which would muddy the waters the most. Oh, but then you can take the rook, queen takes d7, and then rook takes c6, queen takes e6, rook takes e6, king d7, but then you take the bishop and the a pawn, and I think you're up 2 pawns. Maybe even 3 pawns there. You're up 2 pawns, because they still have the d6 pawn. Okay. So I think it's c6, pin, rook here, take. Oh, it says queen to c4. I think rook takes c6 is also winning here. I think rook takes c6. Oh, queen takes e7 is also good. I was thinking this, and then here, take this and take this is what I had. And it does say plus 2.5 or more. Yeah, white's up 2 pawns in a rook in game, and it's 2 connected pass pawns, which is very good. Okay, happy with that one. Knight on d4 is pinned. First instinct is pawn to f4. And then how does black avoid losing the knight? I don't think they do. I mean, what else? f4, I guess king e7. f4, king e7 is probably the idea. Bishop to e2 or bishop to b3 are also move options right at the start. Bishop e2, he has to play rook e1 to avoid losing material. And then if we take on d4, he takes on e2. That looks pretty equal, I will say. Bishop b3, he has to play rook b1 or d3. Rook b1, bishop a2, rook b4. I don't think that really gains us a whole lot. It could be like just rook to d7 right here. And then we're threatening f4, and it's very, very difficult for black to break this, to deal with this pin. Rook d7, he can play rook c1, but then we play bishop takes d4, rook takes c4, take the bishop on e5, take on f7. I guess we lose the e4 pawn, so we're not really ahead there. So rook d7, rook c1. It feels like black is... Oh, wait, then we have rook takes d4. No, we don't. Because then he takes d4, we take back, he plays e5. Oh, wait, what am I talking about? Yeah, rook c1, we just take the rook. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just kind of some... Yeah, rook c1, we just take the rook. So I think it might be rook to d7 then. Because how does black stop f4? f4 right away, he has king e7. Sometimes I see, at least in my mind, what's very tricky stuff, and then other times I miss that if the rook goes to c1, I can just take the rook. I don't know why my brain works that way. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm actually not even recognizing that there's instructions here. I literally did not see this either. I didn't even look at this. But it's pretty much pointing out that king e7 is a resource, so I think that makes the answer pretty obvious. I think we have to start with rook to d7. And then we play f4. Not f4, no, wow. Why would f4 not work here? f4, pawn takes. If the bishop moves, you take d4. If the bishop takes f4, you take f4 or d4. I don't know why f4 would not work here. What else? Maybe h4 and then f4? But then if we play h4, he plays g4. Hey, Shadowblaze. How are you today? We can also play bishop e2 and then take h5. That looks really strong as well. Bishop e2. Yeah, okay. f4, knight c2. Hold on, I'm curious. Hold on. Rook to d7. g5. They had this kind of in a weird sequence. Let's see. King g7. King g7. Bishop takes e6, but not f4. So I think the trick here is after g5, if we play f4, there is this knight c2 move. f4, knight c2 is the trick, I believe. But then we take e5. They take back. Yeah, that is the issue, because if you take on d1, they take e3 with the fork and take on d1, and then we're not a piece. So f4, knight c2, I guess, is the trick. But bishop e2, and then taking the h-pawn is game over. Okay. So I think the important point on this one is you don't want to jump the gun on playing f4 right away. Yeah, hold on. So f4 right away is not met by the knight c2 defense. f4, knight c2 doesn't work here because I take this with check and then I have this check. This is how I save the bishop, and then I take the rook on d1. So f4 is a threat after rook d7 because knight c2 I take and then play bishop f4 check. Once black plays g5, now f4 doesn't work because of knight c2, take. There's no bishop f4 check this time because black has it covered. Black has that f4 check covered. So g5 stops f4 because it stops the bishop f4 later, but it does unprotect h5, and now bishop e2 is a big problem. Yeah, I missed the knight c2 defense. That's f4 knight c2 is that's a tricky one. But it is a very nice defense, yeah. Okay. I was happy to get rook d7 without even looking at the instructions, though. I think if you saw the instructions, then it becomes very obvious that rook d7 is the first move. But without the instructions, you still have to figure out why f4 doesn't work. f4, king e7 was black's trick in the very first position. Okay, what are we doing here? Bishop takes f4, queen takes f4, rook f3, queen c1 check, king h2, and then I take the f7 pawn. Looks pretty good. I don't really see why that would be not good. I don't know if it's winning, but I think we're pretty much guaranteed. Oh, that's not true. I'm so sorry. If we take f4 and play rook f3, there is queen to c7. Queen c7 guards the f7 pawn. Okay, never mind. So I don't think it's taking on f4, at least not immediately. Bishop takes f7, queen takes f7. Then bishop takes f4 is a possibility. But bishop takes f7, rook takes f7. Then I'm not seeing the clear-cut follow-up there. Yeah, so bishop takes f7, rook takes f7. What are we doing from there? Do we have a follow-up? Bishop takes f4, queen takes f4, rook f3, queen c7, black defends. It feels like it should be some bishop takes f7 idea. If we move the rook just off of d3 passively, like rook d1, it feels very incorrect. So bishop takes f7, rook takes f7. That's the move to crack. I think queen takes f7 on from black. Then we take on f4 and the queen's pinned. I think there were... No, even there, I'm sorry. Even there, rook takes d7, or rook takes d3 would lose us a piece. Yeah, never mind. Hold on. I don't think bishop takes f7 works at all on move 1. E5? E5 is the move to think about. Because if the queen takes on e5, then the queen isn't protecting f7. Maybe then we have bishop takes f7, rook takes f7, rook d8 check, king h7, take f7, and then we're up the exchange. That looks pretty good. e5, if the queen moves to e7, we take the knight, we're up a piece. If the queen moves to f5, then we can play... Then we have, like, bishop takes f4, queen takes f4, then rook f3, and he can't go back to the c7 square. Then that looks better. Okay, I think I play e5 in the game, now that I'm recognizing that it gives me more opportunities. I think I play e5 without a ton of extra calculation, and then I think we play bishop takes f4, and maybe even e6. Like, take the knight, then e6 actually looks very strong. That might be even better. Take that, and then e6. Yeah. And we're winning a pawn and making big improvements here. Yeah, this is the way the game went. Black ended up resigning. He's going to lose the f7 pawn and be in big trouble here. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. e5. It said bishop takes f4, queen takes f4. Gives white a dominant position, but not a winning position. Whereas e5, queen takes, we checked here and won the rook, which is good. This version of things, we are up material. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty happy with that one. Let's see, what are we doing next? Okay. No great checks to start with. I don't think we're going to check on f7 or g6 or h6 with the queen. Bishop takes f7 is definitely a possibility. Knight to g4 is a possibility. Pawn to f6, throwing that in there is a possibility. Knight to d5 is a possibility. Okay, I'll first look at bishop takes f7. I think the queen simply takes back though, and I don't really see the follow-up there, so I don't think we're taking on f7 on move 1. So how do we make some major threats here? Not really We could play bishop e6 to hit the queen, but after black takes the bishop, queen g6 check is maybe available, king h8, we take on e6, the queen goes to g7. I don't think we have enough for the queen there, or for the bishop there, that we're sacrificing. I don't think that that works. There is an undefended bishop on d4 we can maybe attack, but not exactly sure how to attack it. Queen g4 and knight c2 are about the only moves that make any sense, and queen g4, black just plays bishop f6, and I don't really think we have a whole lot going on there. Or bishop g7, knight f6, something like that. I like the look of f6, with the idea to put the bishop on c2 and attack in that way. Because right now the bishop hitting f7 doesn't really feel that useful. I also think after f6 we have the knight jumping into f5, which looks strong. So f6, if the bishop takes on e3, just as an example, we can play bishop c2 check, king h8, and then probably just rook takes e3, and I think black's position's pretty bad. It's hard for him to keep us from moving forward. Like rook e7 would be a big threat at that point. If we play f6 and he plays bishop takes f6, we have bishop c2 check, king h8. Then probably some kind of knight to g4 or knight to d5. It looks quite strong, I will say. I'm liking f6 here. I really like the idea of not... First of all, we don't let black block on f6 with their knight. Second of all, without the f5 pawn, we get the b1 h7 diagonal with the bishop. And in my mind, it almost doesn't matter that it loses the pawn, because opening up that diagonal and the f5 square feels so worth it. You want to go bishop c2 first. I think if we go bishop c2, he plays knight f6, is kind of my my downside with that. I think we want to push the pawn. Oh, okay, beats me. It's not pushing the pawn. I feel like in a game, I probably push the pawn and play on the compensation there, to be quite honest with you, but... Okay. Something better is available. Maybe knight g4 first makes a lot of sense. It does stop the knight from moving off of g8, and then we can play f6 next move. Maybe is better. Okay, so we start with knight g4, but I do think we play f6 pretty soon. Is my assumption. Maybe even knight takes h6. Like knight takes h6, knight takes back, queen g5 check, king h7, f6. Threatening mate on g7 and threatening bishop c2 check, and both of those are very difficult to deal with. Maybe that's it. Take this. Yeah. Okay, if the knight takes back, check here, and then bishop c2. Apparently less strong as f6, then there's bishop takes f2 check. Okay, bishop takes f2 I did miss, I will say. I missed this idea. And then here, white's better. White is going to be up a piece, though, anyways. Okay, so white's still in good shape there. Yeah, white's much better. Now, it does say at the start, f6, knight takes f6, check here, take. It says this is an equal position. I don't know, is this so equal? It looks pretty bad for black, but I guess our knight is kind of pinned. It's a little hard to make progress. Knight g4, it says that this move prepares to play f6. And then depending on how black plays, you know, if the bishop goes back to f6 or something, we can trade the bishops. Or trade knight for bishop, and I think white's in good shape. Okay. Bishop f6 runs immediately into queen takes h6. That's a nice tactic. Knight takes, then we fork on f6 and take the queen. Okay. So you go knight g4, then f6. I was trying to play f6 a little too quickly. Do we have bishop takes g5 or rook takes h6 here? That's kind of the question. I don't think rook takes h6 works. King takes h6, queen takes g5, king h7, queen f5 check, king g8. I feel like black is okay there. Maybe we have a perpetual check or draw, but I don't think we have a mating attack. Bishop takes g5 looks very reasonable. We hit the rook on d8. They take us, we take back with check, king goes to f8. Then rook h6 to h8 looks very, very dangerous. And I think that our attack is strong. Black can play f6. Rook h8 check, king e7. Rook h... maybe then queen f5. I think that this just looks like it should be really good, quite honestly. Oh, it's not this, though. Fair enough. What is better? If we play c6, we lose the rook on d6. That doesn't feel great. h7 is worth consideration. Maybe h7 and then you just push the h-pawn. Yeah. Even if he takes on c5, you just push the h-pawn. You make a queen, and that's game over. If he takes the rook on d6, you can take on d8 if you needed to. But you can also just promote and make a queen and have checkmate. Okay. I feel like I may have seen this game before, but the answer is not jumping out at me, so... We have some rook d8, queen g7 ideas, but the queen on e5 covers g7, so probably not rook to d8 right away. They're threatening our queen. We don't have a fantastic check. Queen takes g8 would be nice, obviously, if the king had to take, then rook to d8 would be mate, but the knight can take on g8, which kind of spoils that idea. Queen to g7 check, he just takes with the rook, we check on d8, he moves the rook back, and we don't have a mate there. So I don't think it's a check. Queen f6, he also just takes the queen. Rook to d8 on move 1 I don't think works because he just takes on d8 and he continues to protect the g7 square with his own queen. So I think we either have to move the queen or counterattack. The tricky part is if we're counterattacking, we need to be threatening mate or threatening his queen. So f4 is a move worth consideration. Taking on e7 is worth consideration, even though I think after black takes back, there's not a follow-up. This isn't me being tired. This is me trying to trying to rub my eyes to think here a little bit. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Yeah, knight g4 making a bigger threat on the queen is an idea, absolutely. That's good to point out. I hadn't really gotten to that step of things, but that is, at least in my own mind, but you're absolutely correct that that's a move worth considering. Because the pawn on f5 is pinned, right? If he takes on g4, we take on e5, and then we're up the exchange, which is great. If he takes our queen, we take on e5. Right, and then if he takes on h5, rook d8, knight blocks on g8, and then knight takes f7 as mate. That looks very strong. Yeah, exactly. Good. I don't think I've asked before, Thomas, but like, what's your rating? I'm really curious because you're having a good you're solving a lot of these as well, even these that are quite complicated. Just for curiosity's sake. You're doing really well with these. Yeah, knight g4 is looking pretty good here. Because he could play queen e6, right? So queen e6 is probably black's safest move after knight g4. 21-20 feet. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Yeah, very strong player. Yeah, knight g4, queen e6. What do we do there? That's kind of the question. But then we can play, I think then we can play rook to d8, right? Because then black is no longer protecting the g7 square. Rook d8 right now didn't work because he would just take the rook and the queen guards g7. But after knight g4, queen e6, then rook to d8, we are now threatening queen g7 checkmate. How does he stop that? He'd have to play queen to g6, I think. But then we can take the knight on e7. He can't take the rook on h5 because of queen f6 mate. And if we get to take the knight, he doesn't really capture anything. Like, he could take g4, but then we take on c5 with our rook, and we're up a rook. Or at least we're up the exchange. I don't know, whatever it is. Knight g4, queen e6, then rook to d8, I think, is the connection there. Can black do anything else? Knight g4, if he goes queen c7, then we check on f6, and that's game over. I think knight g4 is the way on this one. But then I think here it's rook to d8 is the follow-up, yeah. And after knight to g... Okay, I didn't think about knight g6. I thought queen g6, and then we take the knight. And this does mate or win the game quickly. After knight g6, we trade, we check. Okay. I think that, I think once you get to this point, I don't know if you have to continue calculating, but it, you're not losing anything. Like, we haven't really even sacrificed anything to get here, so you can probably figure it out, like, at that point in the game. Okay, very nice. Yeah, knight g4, very, very nice move on that one. Okay, what are we doing here? No great checks. Queen f3 and d1, we just get captured. We can take h4, but after they take back, I'm not really sure about the follow-up there. I don't think we have a whole lot. If we take on g3, it's kind of the same thing. They just take us, and then they take on h6, and we don't have anything there. Bishop e3 is a possibility. Bishop g5 is a possibility. Bishop g5 looks pretty decent. Like, I feel like if I can trade the bishops and then take on g3 later, I feel like white's in trouble. The bishop on h4 is kind of the glue to black's position here somewhat. Or, sorry, to white's position. Bishop g5 is a possibility in that regard. Any other moves to consider at the start? Just kind of look at the forest, look at the forest through the trees. Look at the trees through the forest. I'm not sure what the saying is. Rook to c7 is almost worth consideration. I don't think it works, but if we could somehow move the queen away, maybe then we have some queen e2 to g2 mate. But, oh, hold on. Or we have some kind of queen d1 check idea, but I don't think it works to play rook c7. Rook c7, he takes us. Queen e2, I think we get mated first. Some kind of queen f7, rook takes h6. If queen d1, king h2, we check on e2, they take h3, we run out of checks. I don't think that works. But it is worth keeping in mind that rook to c7 could be a move to throw in at some point. My first thought is bishop g5, but what would white do against bishop g5? And is it really that dangerous? We have to keep an eye on the c8 square as well, just in case there's some checks that white can throw in. What are we doing? I'm still leaning towards bishop g5. Bishop takes, if they take us on g5, we take with the rook, I assume. And then white can't really bring their queen down easily, because then we will have queen d1 check, queen e2 check. If they take h3, we have rook h5 mate. So the trade of bishops on g5 does kind of handicap white's queen. We're threatening queen takes g3, maybe? Maybe? I guess then queen c8 check would be a little bit annoying. Okay. You could take on d5 instead of g3 after that, but I don't know. I don't know. Bishop f4, trying to take advantage of the pinned pawn. White just plays rook takes f4, I think. Bishop e3 doesn't seem like a bad starting off move, but we're not really threatening anything, as far as I can tell. I don't think we're threatening anything, really. Could play e3 and just push the e-pawn down the board, but feels kind of slow. Feels like white, you know, can play rook e6, or maybe not rook e6. It feels like they can defend there somehow. Queen is undefended, king is weak, of course, g3 is a target, h4 is a target, pawn on g3 is pinned. I feel like in a game I play bishop g5, I guess, and then after bishop takes g5, I probably take with the rook on g5. If I take with the queen, I'm worried about queen c8 check, king h7, queen takes h3. I think white has a perpetual there, worst case scenario. Maybe we get mated, I don't know, but we're not winning that. Let's say that for sure. So we would take back with the rook on g5. It looks a little sketchy to open the king up like that, but I think white is also tied down to protecting the checks on their back rank. And then guarding the g3 pawn is not the simplest exercise in the world. And the d5 pawn. I don't really think this is the answer, but it also is probably what I would play in a game. Yeah, it's not the best answer. Okay. So what's better? Something like rook c7, queen takes, and then queen e2. It's like close to working, but our king is too exposed. Our king is too exposed for that to work. We would just get mated. So what else are we doing here? White is threatening rook takes h6. This entire time, white is maybe threatening that. So we don't exactly have a completely free move in this position to do whatever we want. But at the same time, taking a bishop is not the biggest threat in the world, I would say. But what are we doing with our kind of free move that we have? Maybe we do just push the pawn. Like, we push, they take the bishop, we push again. White doesn't really have a check at that point. And then he has to worry about queen e4 check and queen f3 check and stuff. Maybe we just push the pawn. I don't know. So Okay, pushing the pawn once. And then... Why does rook c7 not work? I'll go back in just one moment to explain that. I think the problem with rook c7 was the queen takes on c7. We can check on d1 and e2, but we don't have a mate after king takes h3. And then the problem is if we play... Whoa. What happened to my computer? Oh, that was weird. Am I still live? Okay, that was weird. Some kind of computer glitched for a second. Oh yeah, it shows up on the stream and the screen just goes black. I don't know what happened there. Hold on, let me make sure I'm live. Okay, I am live. Okay, that was weird. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, I think if rook c7, queen takes c7, white is threatening like a faster mate than what we were able to threaten, is the problem. We didn't have our own threat of mate that we could do immediately, and white was threatening like queen f7 check and rook takes h6 mate. Yeah, I don't know what happened right there. That was weird. Okay, I think queen f3 check. And then if king h2, maybe we have queen f2 check or bishop f4 or something. But white is threatening rook e8 check, followed by rook e7 check. So you have to be careful about that. Bishop f4 looks decent because you're threatening queen f3 and then taking on g3, but white plays rook e8 check, and I think we're in trouble. Or at least it's very messy. Probably we're getting mated. Queen f3 check, king h2. What do we do there? Oh wait, queen f3, king h2, queen f2 check. Queen takes, pawn takes. The rook can go back to f6 to protect against the promotion, but then we play rook f7. And if the rooks are traded, there's actually no way for white to stop the pawn. I think queen f3, king h2, queen f2 check is the move. Now, white can play king to g1 after queen f3. Rook c7 now, there might be queen to g6 or rook to g6 check or something like that. Actually, I could have mentioned that from the start. Maybe rook to c7, there was also checks on g6 now that I'm looking at it. I think it's queen f3. I think white has to play king g1. And then the question is, do we take on g3 or do we do anything different first? Queen f3, king g1. Rook takes g3, bishop takes g3, queen takes g3. You can go back to h1, and it's really hard to involve our bishop in the attack, unfortunately. I think we're just too slow. Queen f3, okay, so queen f3, king h2, I'm happy with the answer we have there, but queen f3, king g1. It looks more suicidal to play that, because you walk into the g file, but if we don't have a win, then, you know, appearances can be deceiving. Queen f3, king g1. It feels like we should have something there. It just looks so dangerous. King h1 not possible? Ah, queen e1. Good point. Queen e1, bishop e5. Even there, though, he has rook takes e5. We take, and then he gets perpetual check. He checks on like g6, f6, e6, and we never escape the checks. I think he has a draw there. After bishop e5, he takes the bishop and then checks on g6. Oh, sorry. You said bishop e5, and I imagine a bishop's on e5, but you're correct. The bishop can't go to e5. Oh boy. Yeah, bishop f4. Okay, fair. There's no rook takes e5 after bishop f4. You're correct. So hold on. So check there. Take, take, take. King h1. It's funny. When you said bishop e5, I immediately thought, oh yeah, the bishop goes to e5, duh, and then the bishop can't go to e5. That's funny. But no, you're correct. Queen e1, king h2, bishop f4, king h3, queen g3 is mate. Okay, so he can't go to h1. Good point. So you'd have to go to f1. But then how do we go from there? h2? Maybe h2? But then I feel like he checks us first somehow. Like queen to g6 check. I think we're probably getting mated. Bishop g7, rook e8. We have to block with the queen. He takes us. He somehow forks the king and the pawn later, and then we lose. So h2 feels too slow in that position. We could play queen f3 check. The king goes back to g1, and I think the best we have there is a perpetual check. He could even go to e1 if he's really trying to win somehow. I don't think that wins. I don't think queen f3, king g1, rook takes g3 wins. It draws. We don't lose. But I don't think it wins. Which is very, very annoying. If we start with bishop f4, bishop f4 at the start threatens stuff. Like right here, bishop f4, but he has time to play rook e8 check, king f7, rook e7 check. He takes the rook. I feel like if he checks on e7 and trades the rooks, our attack kind of falls apart. So what are we doing here? What are we doing? These rook e8 checks and queen c8 checks are very annoying. What about rook? No. I was going to say rook f7 right now, but then he plays like rook g6 check or something probably. I don't think that works. Rook e8 check is such an annoying threat. Queen f3, king g1. What do we do? What are we missing here? What are we missing here? What is the answer? I feel like in a game... Okay, so first of all, we are up one pawn, right? We're up a pawn. We have multiple ways to draw. Not that we want to draw, but like, you know, we're not losing here, that's for sure. Like, I'm thinking about in an actual game, you know. And knowing it's a puzzle, we should be winning, I assume. I want to start with queen f3, but after king g1, I'm still not 100% sure on the follow-up. Maybe it's queen f3, king g1, then rook f7? But then queen to g6 is still a sufficiently annoying problem, I will say. We could start with rook c... Oh, sorry. I think we said this earlier. Rook c7, there's like queen g6 or rook g6 or something. Oh, what is the answer on this one? What is the answer here? I think in a game I probably play queen f3, but I think I would play queen f3 in a game. Okay. It is not the correct starting move, though. What do we play? Is it bishop g5 now, maybe? Rook to e8 check is not as much of a problem because after king f7 there's no more rook e7. If bishop takes g5, I guess the bishop would probably take on g5. Bishop f4 runs into rook e8. Rook c7, I think rook g6 or queen g6 check. this one? I don't know. I don't know this. I don't know. It could be rook c7 now that I'm looking at it a little bit more. Rook c7. If they take, we give mate. That's pretty obvious. Queen f3 to g2 or something. If they play rook g6 check, it might be king f7 or bishop g7. Yeah, maybe some kind of queen trade, and then the pawn on e3 is just strong enough to win the game on its own. That's what I'm thinking at this point. Maybe rook c7, rook g6 check, king f7. If they take our queen, or maybe even bishop maybe bishop g7. They get our queen, we get theirs. The e2 pawn is a big, or the e3 pawn is a big problem for them, I think. If they play queen to g6 check, we trade the queens. We play probably bishop g7, and then again the e3 pawn's not the easiest thing in the world to deal with. Maybe it is rook c7. And then here I thought the bishop had to block. I think if we go king to one of these two squares, white takes with check and then takes the d6 pawn with check. So I think we block with the bishop, and then we do just play this in game. It says white can win the bishop, but it doesn't help him because he has to give the rook up for the pawn. Okay, so we're essentially trying to trade pieces and get into this endgame where the e-pawn is a strong enough asset. Okay, so eventually we got the answer, but not the easiest. Again, it's not easy to evaluate those positions, is what it comes down to. E3 we came up with, which I'm happy about, and then yeah, rook c7 is the only move that gives black a big advantage. Interesting. Queen f3 check. I just want to check. Okay, king h2. We had the queen f2, so this calculation was good. And then rook f7. Okay, I'm happy with that calculation. We had problems with king g1, and apparently there is not a winning path here. Take, take, take. King has to go to f1 because, as Thomas pointed out, king h1, this wins the game, which is correct. Good calculation there. But there's not a win from this position. We have a draw, but no win. Whereas if we go rook to c7, if the queen takes, this is mate. And if queen to g6, we trade the queens, and this pawn is going to be this pawn is a big enough asset to help win the game. And finally, if the rook checks, yeah, bishop g7, take, take. Even if he gets behind the pawn, we now are threatening to check and then promote. Maybe he tries to cover the promotion square, but black just plays this endgame where they're up a pawn with like the much better pawns and much more dangerous position here. Yeah, black is definitely better here for sure. Okay. Yeah, tough. Maybe the moves themselves are not the hardest to calculate, but it's more like that evaluating of that in position is the tricky part. Okay, so what to do here? First of all, it says black should not be satisfied with the draw, so we at least know we're trying to win. It says queen g4 check is an immediate repetition, and bishop g5 was the move played in the game, but it's not the best way to play. Okay, so we kind of rule those out, and we do something different. So I was thinking either rook c2 or rook c1. I don't think rook c1 works. I think we just lose the rook. Rook c2 is worth consideration, maybe. Trying to get something going on the f2 square. Queen f3 is maybe worth consideration. So the instructions are kind of hinting at maybe a bishop g5 move at the right time. It could be like rook c2 first, somehow, and then bishop g5, and then I think go to f4. I think the idea of bishop g5 is to get to f4 to attack h2, because this bishop is not really helpful for hitting h2. It's more focusing on f2. But if we start with bishop g5, then white plays knight to d3 to cover the f4 square. But if we go rook c2 first, they take there. Then we go bishop g5, or maybe we take back first and then try bishop g5. Then I think we're making some progress. I feel like rook c2 first. I feel like rook c2. Knight takes, rook takes. But they can push a7 is kind of the bothersome move. But then what do we do there? We can check on g4. If king h1, we have queen f3 check, then bishop takes f2 with mate. They would play king at f1, of course. But then maybe queen e2 check and bishop takes f2, and white looks to be in a very shaky spot even if they have two queens. It's difficult to evaluate. I think it's rook c2 at the start. Oh, okay, fair enough. It could also be rook c5. Rook c5 blocking the queen off from protecting f2, and then maybe some kind of queen f3 take f2, or take f2 then queen h2 idea. That actually looks decent. Rook to c5, then bishop takes f2 is a legitimate threat. I don't think we take f2 right away because the queen takes. Maybe rook c5. Okay. Rook c5 is the answer. It says preventing the queen from coming home to defend the king side and threatening to capture on f2. Or attack the queen. Or attack the pawn, sorry. If the knight goes back, you just take the knight. And then here, black is ahead material and needs to survive. Pretty much just needs to deal with white pushing the a-pawn. This was not necessary to calculate, but this all works out in black's favor. So yeah, we just want to start with rook c5 to cut the queen off from the king side. I don't know if that's the only good move in the position, but white's a-pawn is moving very quickly, so it is probably a very much a critical moment. It says queen g4 works, but it pretty much says after queen g4 you have to go back. You have to still play rook c5 at some point anyways. Like you have to do it this way. Personally, I would have thought that throwing in these moves is useful because now you're hitting f2 quicker than you were when the queen was on h3. But I think you can do rook c5 from the first move as well, and white's still in trouble here. Okay, good. Let's keep going. This feels like we move the knight off of g5 and check on h7. So knight takes f7 is my first instinct. And then I think we're just mating black. Take f7 and then check on h6. Now, the tricky part is black can play bishop takes d5. So I think that's the real trick to the position that makes it more difficult. Now hold on. We don't need to take on... Actually, maybe we do. If we play knight h7... and they take the knight, then we have queen to h6 check, take on g6, and I think we crash through that way. The problem is after knight h7, black can still take on d5. We check on h6, the king goes to g8. But then we don't have a win there, not right away at least. You can take back on d5, and I think white's in good shape, but I don't think we have a win of material guaranteed. Even though I would still be rather happy with white's position for sure. So we have to move. We want to move the knight on g5. That's really what it comes down to, I think. So knight e6 check is also a move. Knight takes f7 is a move. Knight takes f7. I think they play bishop takes d5, and that kind of. I think that spoils things because the knight is hanging, and I think the attack diminishes. Yeah, we could throw in knight takes f8 to win material. That's true. That's for sure. Knight h7, bishop takes d5, take f8, and we just pick up the exchange. I was kind of thinking there might be something more than that, but that does simply put win material if we wanted to go for that. No question. Yeah, I mean if that wins the exchange, I think we're happy about that. I was trying to see maybe if there was something else that's even better, but I would not be unhappy about winning the exchange there. That's for sure. So, yeah, okay. Okay, it's not knight takes f8 though, so there is something stronger. I think I would check. I may not rush to take the rook. I feel like the knight is stronger than the rook. That's kind of what I was getting at. I might actually just take back on d5, and then maybe play some kind of bishop g5, bishop f6 thing. Like maybe even bishop g5 right now, actually. Because if they take pawn takes, and then knight f6 is a huge threat. If they play f6, I take on g6 with check. And if they do nothing, I have knight f6 check, take, and mate on g7. I think we can actually ignore the bishop and play bishop g5. Now, I was leaning towards pawn takes, but knight takes is also worth a thought. Knight takes, there's f6 though, and the queen comes to defend. So I think pawn takes is better. And then, yeah, after f5, now we can capture on f8. And we've provoked more weaknesses in black's position because we can take f8 and g6 and d5 and h5, and it's just a much worse version of things for black. I am curious what the evaluation is if we just simply take the rook, but I thought we could get a little bit more out of it if we just, yeah, if you take the rook, white is better. If you take the rook, it's like +1, but queen h6 check, and then bishop g5 is like +3. Pawn takes d5 here is also +3. This is like a better version of essentially not taking the rook yet. You don't want to take the rook here because now your queen gets hit and you don't get any material. But yeah, bishop g5 is strong, and then pawn takes, and then yeah, black has a hard time dealing with all of the threats. Okay, let's keep going. We are through 1,080. There are 48 puzzles left. I think I wanted to get it down to 34. I was going to do 34 today and 34 tomorrow, was kind of the thought. So we have maybe another 14 or so? Something like that. I think we've done 20, is what it comes down to. Okay, bishop takes f2, and then queen takes a5 is first instinct. The problem with that is bishop takes f2, queen takes a5. There is knight takes e6. But I feel like I've seen this before. I think even after knight takes e6, you play bishop takes g2, I believe. King takes g2, you check on d5 and take the knight, you're up 2 pawns. If queen takes f2, you take on e6 because there's no longer a pin, you're up 2 pawns. Otherwise, if they take your rook, you take their rook on f1 and you're up 2 pawns again. So I do think that, you know, seeing this is step 1, but then having the answer for knight takes e6 is very important. Because if you don't have a good answer for this, you actually look like you're in trouble. But you have bishop takes g2, and then you check, oh. I have no clue why checking here and taking the knight is not good. Maybe it's this check and then taking the knight. Yeah, and you're up 2 pawns. So I think the important point on this one is seeing the bishop takes g2 move. Seeing that they can take on e6, but then also seeing that you can take on g2. I do feel like I've seen this one before, though. So, anyways. Alright, let's keep going. What is going on here? Our queen is hit. The king is super weak on a2. We have a couple of checks, but none of them are looking immediately crushing or anything like that. Knight c2 looks very strong, now that I'm looking at it. Knight c2 is very pretty. If they take our queen, we play rook takes b2 checkmate. If they don't take our queen, we're threatening rook takes b2, knight takes b2, queen a3, king b1, queen takes b2. I guess knight c2, there is rook to b1. Where we may not have mate, but we can just play queen c6, and I think we just have a really good looking position, honestly. Knight c2, I think I would play this, like, once I see that the queen is not hanging and that I have more threats, I think I go knight c2 without a ton of calculation. And then they play king b1, and then I get concerned, because now the queen is hit and the knight's hit. Okay. But I think it's a position where, again, knight takes queen is not the biggest threat, because rook takes b2 looks dangerous. I might even be able to play, like, rook to c8. They take my queen, I take b2, and then I take c5. I guess they run to d1. Feels like there should be multiple moves that are good. Maybe queen to b4. Am I up a pawn? I am up a pawn, so I can trade queens. Queen to b4. If they take on c2, then we play rook to c8. And I don't know how white protects b2 and a4 simultaneously. I think white's getting crushed there. And if they take my queen, I take back with the knight or the rook. And I think we're maintaining our extra pawn advantage. But would not surprise me in the slightest if there was something even better. Maybe it's just, actually, hold on. Maybe it's just bishop takes b2. Hold on. Bishop takes b2. If they take the queen, knight a3. Oh, it's not mate, because he has king a2. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Scrap that idea. We could go knight a3 right now. Knight a3, but the knight was just on a3. If the king goes to a2, we're back to the same position. Queen a3, there's queen takes c2, rook to c8. Looks very bad for white, I will say. If he moves the queen, I take the knight and I crash through. I think queen a3 might be the simplest. Yeah, queen a3. White has had enough since there's no defense against black's threats. If you take on c2, you hit the queen, you take a4, and white gets crushed on the b2 square. Okay. Pretty happy with that one. Knight c2, and then queen a3. I wonder if there's any other moves that are also good, but queen a3 looks very, very strong. Yeah, there's probably a few other moves that work. Well, knight a3 is going to work because it's going to just force you to go back to the same position. What was another move I was looking at? I was looking at bishop takes b2. This one doesn't work because because a2 is available. But yeah, queen a3. I was also thinking queen c6. Or no, queen to b4 was what I was thinking. Queen takes, knight takes. Yeah, black is also better here. You're not mating white, but you are up a pawn, and white is not in good shape. But queen a3 is way more decisive, no question. Okay, let's keep going. I mean, bishop takes f7, rook takes f7, knight takes e5 feels pretty clear-cut. Even if white defends the rook, you trade everything on f7, you check on c7. I mean, I don't see why this would not be the right way to play. Yeah, that's the correct way to play. If the king moves away, then you just do almost anything else. So yeah, bishop takes f7. This one's pretty easy. I'm pretty surprised this is in the advanced section because this looks pretty obvious to me, I think. Okay. This feels like b5, b4, and some kind of mate. Right, b5, they take the pawn on g7, b4, king a4, rook takes a2 mate. So I think I would play b5 without really a whole lot of calculation. If he plays b4, we bring the c8, rook to c3 with mate. I think after b5, he has to play rook a1 to guard the a2 pawn. And then, how do we mate from there? How do we mate from there? Okay, I think I'm playing b5 without a ton of... If b5 and rook... If rook a1 is white's best move, then there's no way that b5 is bad. That's for sure. That's how I would think of it during a game. Maybe I moved the rook off of c2 and double on the second rank, and then I play b4 afterwards. But the problem with something like rook to d2 is white can play e7, and then I'm always kind of stuck protecting against the pawn promotion. So that's kind of unfortunate. Could play bishop f5, hit the rook and the pawn. Rook moves, I take the pawn, and then I'm threatening bishop d7 followed by b4 mate. That looks pretty good, I will say. I don't know. There's probably something stronger. Oh, okay. It is the correct way to do things. Then we go bishop d7, I think, threatening b4. Okay. Take this first. No? I'm not sure. Rook c1 or something? I mean, we are down a pawn, so I mean that needs to factor in here. b4 check, king a4. Oh, maybe it's b4 and then bring the rook back to c5. That's very cool. And then if they take the rook, we take back, and there's nothing white can do to stop bishop d7 mate. I was trying to figure out how to make bishop d7 mate work without giving up the a5 pawn, but yeah, you want to guard a5 with the rook. If you go rook a8, then white can play king b5 or something. Yeah, okay, that was a nice one. Kind of curious if all of those moves are absolutely the best. b5 is pretty clear cut. I think that's pretty obvious. Okay, I did come up with bishop f5, and it is the best move. This is best. Okay, there's probably a couple moves that work here, but check here and then rook back to c5. Does rook a8 work? It looks like rook a8 also works, technically, because if king here, you check, they take, you come down here to threaten this mate, and then you'll eventually get the ladder staircase mate. Okay. Good. Going for maybe another 9 puzzles. We're trying to get to 1,094. That way we'll have 34 puzzles left. Okay. So another 9 puzzles or so is the goal. What to do? Yeah, these advanced puzzles are quite tricky. But I do like that they're, you know, the easy puzzles will be a breeze to go through when we do cycle 2. The intermediates, once we solve the intermediates once, I think that they'll be pretty easy to go back through. These advanced ones I'll have to remember. I'll have to remember a lot more moves. And it's also a little bit arguable if doing pattern recognition on advanced puzzles is even really worth it, in my opinion. Because these are definitely not patterns so much. These are more deeper calculation. So you could definitely make an argument that doing the Woodpecker method on these more difficult puzzles isn't worth it. But okay, anyways, we're gonna go with, you know, the recommended method anyways. Okay, what are we doing here? Taking on h6 is obviously the first move to consider. If black takes the rook, we have bishop takes f6 ideas, or queen takes h6 ideas. We have a draw at the very least, which is always nice. Rook to g4 is also a move at the start to consider. Bishop takes f6 is a move at the start to consider. I don't think the b3 bishop is going to be involved unless we somehow get the knight on c5 to move so we can push our pawn to c5. I also don't know how the e2 rook is going to get involved either. Excuse me. I don't think rook takes e3 right now is good because black trades rooks, plays queen takes c3, and they're threatening the bishop as well as mate, which is quite annoying. So rook takes h6, pawn takes queen takes, king g8. queen to g6, king back to h8. You can take on f6 with check, but after rook takes f6, queen takes, king moves. I don't think we're able to incorporate another piece in the attack easily, is the problem I think we run into. So I don't think it's rook takes h6. Could be bishop takes e3 on move number 1, threatening to play bishop takes h6. I mean, that looks obviously very dangerous. And if black takes on c3, we still play bishop takes h6 anyways, and I think black is getting mated. That might work. Is there anything else black can do after bishop takes e3? Rook takes h6 is like such a deadly threat. And if he gives up the rook for the bishop on e3, I would think, generally speaking, we are happy about being ahead the material. Queen a1 is a good move to make sure we have an answer for, but bishop c1 is a check, you're correct. And then after king to g8... Do we have a mate there, though? Queen h7, king f7, queen h5, king g8? We may not have a mate, which is very annoying. Bishop takes, bishop takes h6, queen a1, bishop c1, king g8. Okay, I think it is bishop takes e3. Oh, okay. It is not bishop takes e3. All right, fair enough. Check, there, check, there, queen c7, check, there. No mate, pity, yes, exactly. Take. The problem is, that how does the rook on e2... The rook on e2 has a hard time getting involved. The bishop on d4 is not the easiest piece to involve in the attack either, unless we're like taking on f6. But if we ever take on f6, black is generally fine giving up some of the material, or giving up the rook on f8 or something, because we have to sacrifice our rook on h6 to really make progress anyways. The bishop on b3 has a hard time getting in the game. I mean, it's got to be one of these moves then, I assume. Rook g4 is also worth consideration, but I thought black would just play rook e7. And I didn't really see the follow-up there. Hold on, so is it... Oh, wait, never mind. That doesn't work. Take. Man, what are we doing here? It could be something like super slow. We could just play h3. h3, and then there's not a whole lot black can do to stop rook takes e3. Because now after the trade of rooks and queen takes c3, they're not threatening mate anymore. Then we can play bishop takes h6. If we weren't getting mated by queen e1, then rook takes e3 would look very good. So we could play h3 and then and then get the king safe and then, then take it from there. I don't think that's the answer. Yeah, it doesn't feel like the answer, but it might be something worth considering. What are we doing here? If the bishop on c6 wasn't protecting the rook on e8, then we would have bishop takes f6. But unfortunately, that, it is what it is. Rook g8, rook e7. Take, check, there, there. Take, there. F6, queen c7. Queen h6, king g8. Yeah, I'm not so sure. Let's see. Rook h6, g8, queen h, king g8, queen g6, king h8, rook e3, bishop f6. He takes on f6, we take with check, king moves somewhere. We eventually get the queen to g5, we take the rook, but I think we're down a piece there, right? He has the knight on c5 and the bishop on c6 still. I mean, maybe the fact that we have like a billion pawns on the king side is worth it. It very well could be one of those, like, you know, you're down a piece but up a bunch of pawns and you evaluate it as being better for white. It very well could be that. But we are down a piece, which does have to factor into the evaluation there. I'm going to put it on the board. I mean, rook takes h6. Okay. Is it queen takes or bishop takes right away? I might as well take this and then repeat the position, worst case scenario. I can't imagine. And then bishop takes f6 is what you were saying? Oh, you were saying rook takes e3, then bishop takes f6. Okay, sorry. But I guess bishop takes f6 right away is what to do. Maybe here, oh, hold on. Maybe we have queen g5 check and then f6. Oh, that's what I missed. I did actually think about this, but I thought queen g5, king moves f6. I thought black had queen to c7 to defend, but we actually have, if we check on g5, we will attack the knight on c5. If we check on g6 and play f6, then we're not hitting the knight. I think we check on g5. Oh, okay, what do I know? Queen check, king f8, f6, queen c7. It might also be, it could be rook takes e3 now. Rook takes e3, queen g5, take e3, and then we're up 4 pawns. Which looks good. I mean, our own king is slightly exposed, but 4 pawns for a bishop, or 4 pawns for a knight is a pretty good situation. I'm not really sure why checking here in f6 is not the best move, but let's try rook takes e3 or queen g. So it is queen g6. Is it f6, queen here? But then how do we get this rook in the game? Could be queen d6 check first somehow. Okay, apparently this is a winning attack. Queen goes here, check. I thought king g8. Check. Oh, now you can check and win the knight. But why would you not go queen g5 check to begin with? If you're gonna do this, if you're gonna do the check and then f6, why don't you check on g5? I don't know why queen g5 and f6 wouldn't also work, unless maybe black has some defense that black must have some defense. You can go to f7 this time. And then apparently we're getting mated ourselves. So hold on. What? So we were checking here and then playing f6. Force the queen back. Then you win the knight. Okay. You don't give black the chance to play queen takes c3, I guess is the difference. And then once the king moves away, you know, then you take on c5. And you're up. Now you are ahead like 3 pawns with an easily winning position, I think. Okay. Yeah, that's like a 10-move sequence. Definitely tricky with the length of calculation from the start. I think the start... Yeah, so, I mean, this is quite honestly like the first sequence I thought about, but I didn't really see... It's like going a bit further, I guess. Like, these are all the most straightforward moves. Like, take h6 is first instinct. You know, eventually something like this is pretty early on in the instinct. But I didn't see the win here. That's what it came down to. I didn't see the win from here. I thought that black would be able to defend, but I guess I kind of didn't anticipate that you could still win the knight. I think the knight on c5 becoming an undefended piece is kind of what I was missing. Okay. Good puzzle. All right, let's go further. I think we'll go again. We're gonna go to like 1094, another 6, 7, 8 puzzles or something like that. Knight takes d6, king takes d6, take on f6 is kind of the first instinct, but the problem is I feel like that endgame is not better for white, because black can trade queens. Black is not threatening to take either one of our pieces, because then we take f6. e5, the queen takes on e5, and I don't think that that works for us. Knight d4, queen takes d4, knight c3, queen takes c3, e5, queen takes. Knight takes d6, king takes d6, e5, queen takes. That doesn't seem great. I'm gonna flip this fan on real quick. A little bit cold. e5, queen takes, queen f2, maybe. Oh, with the idea of rook e1? Maybe, maybe. Does black have time? No, he can't move the knight because queen f7's probably pretty dangerous. Okay. Queen f2, kind of a quiet move, but rook e1's a serious threat. What if black moves... If they move the king, we can take the knight. Do they go back to b2? What if the queen goes back to b2 or something like that? Rook e1 check, king d7, bishop f5 check, we win the queen. That looks good. Rook e1 check, king f8 though. Queen g5, hold on. e5 take care. Oh, or queen g5 is what you're saying. Yeah, e5, queen takes, queen f2, queen g5 is definitely something that would need an answer. Rook e1 check, king d7, bishop f5 check, and then take d6 looks sufficiently annoying, I will say. Rook e1 check, king f8, knight takes d6. I think white's got compensation, but I don't know if we're mating or winning there. Black is threatening queen to e5 just right off the bat here. If we play like rook e1 first, queen e5, and we kind of get our attack shut down. So I feel like we almost have to play e5. We just need to open up lines towards the king, because if we don't play e5, unless we play e5 or knight takes d6, and I don't think knight takes d6 gets the job done. If we don't play one of these two moves, I think that black puts the... I think they put the queen on e5 themselves, and we kind of run out of attacking ideas. So I almost feel like we have to play e5, which apparently is not the best move, surprisingly. Knight takes d6 is kind of the only other one I'm focusing on, I will say. Knight takes d6, king takes d6. I mean, if we take on f6, I think black's fine with that endgame. If we play queen f4 check, he plays queen e5, he's fine. If we play e5 check, he plays queen takes e5, he's fine. So I don't think it's knight takes d6, but what are we doing if it's not that? What are we doing if it's not knight takes d6 or e5? I mean, you could play knight c7, but after, I don't know, black could even bring the queen back to e5 and just play the endgame down a pawn. It's probably better for white, but knight to c7, they could also just play rook to c8. And What do we do here? I don't think it's knight takes d6, right? So I'm at least correct about that. I don't think we take f6 first either. Rook to b1, he takes on c2, and we no longer have pressure on the f6 knight. I don't think that's the way to do it. Plus the rook is hanging on b1. What is this? Black's not threatening anything, but the question is, how do we make a threat of our own at the same time? I don't really know. Black is threatening queen e5, is kind of their idea, I think. What do we do? What do we do? I don't know this one. I'm gonna spitball moves here a little bit. I feel like in a game, I think I would play e5 in the game. I understand it may not be the best move, but I do like the look of e5 and then queen f2 with rook e1 coming. I think that it looks sufficiently dangerous. Queen f2 and flip the moves around, just get the knight to d4. Maybe. Yeah, knight to d4 into c6 could be very strong. Okay, I'll try your move. Okay, it's not queen f2. That also looks good. Queen f2, knight d4, and try to get into c6 or f5. I do like the look of that as well. Okay, I'm going to try knight c7 and knight e6. Nope. Queen f4 first. Okay. I mean, you just threatened d6. What if black plays rook a to d8? I don't know why that would be bad. In the game, Kramnik, you know, super strong player, did play e5, and he did somehow get this endgame, but he is down a pawn, and white is not in great shape. So yeah, queen f4. I thought queen e5. This is what I thought. Like, I said rook to d8 a second ago, but I was saying multiple times, oh, queen e5 just blocks everything. But I guess you can trade queens and push the pawn and check, and then you take the knight. Okay. That's a bit annoying. I think I kind of overestimated the queen e5 defense, maybe. I kept saying, oh, queen e5 is black's idea, but I didn't think about, oh, what if he does queen e5? Do I just trade and check on d6? Okay. Not super happy with that calculation, but it is what it is. I feel like I may have seen this one before. I feel like knight c6 for some reason is a move. I don't think so right away, but something like that is maybe an idea. E takes f6, the rook has to take, and then we play queen e8 check, the rook blocks. I don't think that's too bad for us. I mean, we move back to g6, and you're kind of right back to the same position, I guess. Could take on e6 first, and then if the bishop takes, then you take on f6. If rook takes, you have queen e8 check and take the bishop. If the rook does block, probably the king would move at that point. Boy. You could also just take on e6 a bunch of times and then play rook takes d5, and that looks pretty good. F takes e6. I guess you'd have to contend with black playing f takes e5. And maybe that's the trick. So maybe if that's the trick, I like knight takes e6. It's neither one of these, though. It's got to be pawn takes f6 then. I mean, what else? What else is it if you're not taking f6? I mean, you could play rook g3 or something, but you're not really threatening mate. You're threatening to take f6, but if rook g3, they take on e5, You take on e6 with the bishop, or with the knight, sorry, they take. You take with the pawn, probably. White doesn't look to be in bad shape there, but you're not really threatening a whole lot. Nothing super forcing or pertinent. So I don't think it's pawn takes f6. I guess rook g3. Wow. Rook h3. I mean, it makes a threat, but I wasn't thinking that that was the biggest problem in the world. Okay, I don't know if I would have really considered rook h3 super heavily. So do they want rook takes h6, pawn takes d4, queen h7, king f7. Yeah, I don't... What do they want here? Take, check there. F6 or something? I got to imagine it's rook takes h6 that's wanted. And, well, if he does this, we have rook h8 check and queen takes f8. But I thought e takes d4, queen check, pawn f6. I guess white is just kind of breaking through. If king e8, I guess you take the pawn and then promote. Okay. Tricky stuff. Yeah, rook h3 was not on my map of... Oh, I can exit out of that. Rook h3 was not really on my list of moves I was heavily considering. Rook g3 is still pretty good for white. I want to know what's wrong with knight takes e6. Take. I thought queen takes, rook takes, and white's up a pawn. I guess rook e7 defends somehow. I don't know. White's up a pawn, black's not capturing it back right away. I guess they probably will take on e5 after this, but even rook d6 and queen takes a6, like, I don't know. I'm up a pawn. I guess black can take h2. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, clearly rook h3 is better. Rook h3, take here. I guess white just kind of breaks through is the idea. f6. Okay. Rook h3 is not... doesn't look like it makes a whole lot of a threat, but apparently it's good. I feel like I've seen this one. I think it's some kind of rook h8 check. There's something on the h file. It's like rook h8 check, and then somehow the queen for white wiggles in. I forget the exact sequence. Black is threatening queen takes b2 just to trade stuff, even though strategically speaking, I think the knight on f5 is pretty strong. You can't really avoid the trade of queens here, but you can... Somehow white gets to black's king first. It might be rook h7 instead of... I think it's rook h7, actually, now that I say that. Yeah, it's rook h7. If the king takes, then you play knight takes e7 check. King h6, rook h1, bishop blocks, g4, black gets mated. Probably. If king h8, rook h1, bishop h6, then you have queen takes f6 checkmate. Okay, so this is the move, and then you're taking on g7 before you take back on b2. I think you can actually ignore this and play rook h1 to threaten your own mate first. And black is in huge trouble. It's equal material, but you're threatened with mate and your knight's hanging, which is bad news for black. So rook h2. Or, sorry, rook h7 is the answer on this one. Rook h8, king takes, you check, king moves, rook a8 would be mate. If you play rook h8, what does black do here? They have no good checks. You have the east 3 square covered. You are up a piece. I'm pretty sure it's rook h8. I think that your threat is so large. I don't know if you need to calculate a whole lot past this. I think you just probably check on h6 and black's just in trouble here. Apparently in the game, white played rook takes h4, and I don't know if white won or if they drew or something, but kind of weird to take on h4. I would check on h6 and somehow keep attacking. Rook h7 looks good. If the queen takes on d5, you have some kind of queen g8 check, rook h5, and then win the queen. Okay. I feel like I might have seen this one too. I don't know why I would have seen so many Kramnik tactics. I'm trying to remember what it is though. It's something obviously on the G file. I don't remember where you move the bishop or if you do move the bishop though. It might be rook h5 to start with. The queen has to go to g4. You play rook to g5. The queen goes back to h3, and then you have like bishop takes c3 or some tactic like that. I think that might be it. Hit the queen. Oh, rook d6. Tricky. Okay, fair enough. Didn't think about that. I guess you have to take the queen. I think we take the queen. Oh, no, we don't take the queen. Interesting. If you take the rook, white takes your rook, you take on d1, they take back, and then we would just be down a queen for a rook there. I don't think we take on d6, because queen takes h5 looks sufficiently annoying. If we're not taking d6 or h3, then what are we doing? Queen f7, queen g5, those all feel very slow because you're no queen g5, white plays queen g4, and you don't have rook to g5 anymore. Queen f7, white plays queen f5, and they're trying to do something in that situation. Oh, maybe bishop f6. Bishop f6 is it. And then you take this. No. Wow. If you take h3 and they take g6 and you take back, you're up the exchange. So I'm not really sure why that wouldn't work. So like queen to g7 or something? Queen g5? What do you do here? Why would you not take the queen and then take with the rook on g6 and be up the exchange? I mean, white does have a pawn for the exchange, but it feels like black should be in good shape. If you take f6 and they take h5, you're just down a piece, so that looks bad. Queen to c2? Maybe queen to c2, and then you take the bishop on e2 where you're attacking g2 and d1. Maybe this is the idea. And then how does white guard the mate as well as d1? White's losing the game here. King h1, queen takes f3, queen takes d1, rook takes g4, etc. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, queen c2 is the key there. Yep, very nice. We can take on b8, but I think black might throw in knight g3 check. Or not check, sorry, knight g3 and then take f1, maybe? Or knight takes f2 and then take on c1, something like that. So that looks sufficiently dangerous in some regards. So we could take e4 first. Then black takes b5. And then what do we do there? Maybe then we play like a4. a4, kick the rook away from guarding c5, and then we win the bishop on c5. That looks decent. I don't see why not. Oh, it's not a4. Something better? Maybe queen to c4? Queen to c4 and then a4? Okay, here... Oh, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. We can't take c1. We have queen to c5, and then we threaten knight e7, knight g6, and then take the rook, but we're also threatening the bishop. Check, 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 and we're up the exchange. Okay. It's kind of a weird sequence of events for whatever reason. I don't know why a4 doesn't work. Take, take. What's wrong with a4? Bishop f2, king f2, oops, sorry, king f2, rook b2. I thought rook to c2 in this position. Queen f4 check. I missed this. Queen f4 takes, and then you take c2, and then you're losing material. Okay. I thought queen f5 for a moment, or queen f6, but I think I missed that there's this in-between capture on c2. So a4 doesn't work because of bishop takes f2, whereas if you go queen to c4, now you can take with the rook and you're doing totally fine. So then black tries bishop takes a3, and after all of this, it looks like you're not actually, it looks like you're actually just down 2 pawns, but queen to c5 and knight e7, eventually you pick up the rook on f8. Okay. I like when the puzzles have like multiple, there's almost like multiple combinations within the same puzzle. Like you could have this position right here on its own be an entire puzzle. The one, you could have this position right here be its own puzzle, right? You could say, okay, white to play and win here, you know. Queen c5, knight e7 to g6. It's a little easier to find from here, whereas in the starting position, you have to kind of see more moves ahead, which is trickier. Oh, this I've heard of this game once I read this description, but I don't remember the move. This game features perhaps the best known example of opening preparation that turned out to be directly losing. I think this was back at a time where the computers were not like perfect, right? They made mistakes, they evaluated things incorrectly, or you needed to let the computer run for longer to find the actual answer. Because yeah, I think Kramnik had prepared out to this position, and the computer on his side of things was saying that he's winning, whereas I think you take on f3, check on e4, and black is, oh no, queen takes f3 looks very good. Yeah, this was in a Marshall for sure. This, yeah, it says versus Lecco. Oh, you can't see it with my webcam blocked. Yeah, this is against Lecco. Yeah, the webcam's kind of in the way. It does say Vladimir Kramnik versus Peter Lecco. And this is a Marshall for sure. Yeah, you know the game. Maybe it's bishop takes g3, then queen f3 or something. I'm not sure. Is it this first? Queen takes f3. There is bishop. Well, what is there? Is it knight takes g3? Maybe it's knight takes g. No? Okay. Yeah, this is a famous game. Absolutely. This mistake in terms of opening preparation would never really happen nowadays because the computers are so much better than they used to be. Nowadays, if you throw a position from opening preparation into the computer, it'll give you the like, it can see out 20 moves into the future very quickly with like the way that machines and engines work nowadays. Whereas back then, I think you needed to let the computer run for like very, very long amounts of times to be able to see 20 moves into the future. Nowadays, the computer will see 20 moves into the future in like maybe a minute if you let it run that long, or less, depending on if you're using like cloud engines or something. Is it knight takes c3? Maybe it's knight takes c3, and then you win the rook in the corner. Okay. Yeah, back then I remember hearing stories of people like leaving their computers running all night to figure out the best way to play in a position for opening preparation, but you don't need to do that anymore. Nowadays you can get the full-blown answer in like 30 seconds if you needed it. Black is a pawn up, but his pieces are uncoordinated at the moment, so it's time to strike. So what is the strike? Knight e5, rook d6. What's the strike? e5 also looks quite good. e5 is an idea for sure. What's the strike? I think this might be our final puzzle, because we'll pick up on 1094 tomorrow, and then we'll only have 24 puzzles left, I believe. Is it 24 or 34? Oh, sorry, it would be 34 puzzles left. But I think we would have done 34 today. Anyways, yeah, we have like 1 or 2 more left for today, and then we'll pause. But let's finish off strong. Let's finish off strong so we can so we can get them correct. So Knight takes e7 check, rook, they just take back. I don't think that does anything. We can... There's no other captures that really make any sense. Rook takes a6 does nothing. Queen takes... Knight to b4 is a serious threat. Rook to b2 is a serious threat. Knight e5 is a threat. And pawn to e5 is a threat. I think that, as far as I can tell, maybe knight to b8 is also a threat, but it kind of feels weird to go that direction. Knight to b4, black plays queen a5, and then I feel like we're thrown on the defensive because both our rook and knight are hit. So I don't think it's knight b4. E5 is probably my next thought. The knight goes to d5, hitting our rook. If we play bishop takes d5, they take back with the queen. I don't exactly see the follow-up there. Maybe we take on a6, but it's equal material. e5, knight d5. Could throw in rook to b2, black plays queen a4 or queen a3. We take on d5, they take back. They still have e7 defended, though, by the rook on e8, which is kind of annoying. e5, knight d5. e5, knight d5, take, queen takes. What do we do? We could throw in e6, e5, knight d5, e6. But after f takes e6, I don't know if that really helps us as much as we would like. Our rook on b6 is still hit. And we don't really have a breakthrough on the attack just yet, as far as I see. If we start with knight to e5, I think black plays rook to d6, and I don't think it's a bad position for us, but I'm not really seeing the follow-up threat. Bishop f1 to c4 is an interesting idea, but it feels a little bit too slow. Black should have time for a free move there, but we can take on a6, we can play bishop c4. It definitely is an idea. Bishop f1 is definitely an idea. I don't know. Bishop f1 looks pretty nice. I don't think it's the strongest move, but I think it also looks pretty decent. Is there anything better? I mean, I'm sure if it's not the best move, then there is something better. The nice thing about bishop f1 is we can also maybe end up with the bishop on b5 in some situations, which is quite nice. Like bishop f1, a5, bishop c4 almost traps the queen. Queen goes to a4, bishop b5, and we make some lineups on the rooks later. I don't know, bishop f1? I didn't think it was the best move, but e5 is kind of the only other move. And then what do we do here? If we take and the rook takes, then knight to b4 looks pretty good. But if we take, the queen is going to take instead. And then I'm not entirely sure what the follow-up is there. You can take d5 and then a6 and, you know, equalize the material. Doesn't look bad. Rook b2, there's queen a4 or queen a3, and I don't see a follow-up there right away. Our rook is hit on b6, which is annoying. So is it rook to b2? But then, what do we do here? Oh, rook e4? Does rook e4 trap the queen? Okay. Well, he has queen a3, right? So rook e4, queen a3. It's not a queen trap. Yeah, I'm kind of jumping the gun here. What's the follow-up here, though? Bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, knight takes e7, the rook is protecting, right? So you can do like bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, rook b8, maybe? And then if rook takes b8, you take e7 with check and then take d5, but you're only winning a pawn and you were down a pawn at the start, so you're not really gaining a whole lot. What do we do? e6 doesn't really work as well anymore because there's bishop takes b2 ideas to be a little bit concerned about at the right time. Oh, wait, we take d5 and then play rook b4. Take d5, rook b4, the queen's trapped, right? Take d5, rook b4, goodbye queen. Okay, that's for sure it. We take d5 and then rook b4. And, okay. What am I talking about? It's not a queen trap if you can go back to a2. Ugh. I'm just missing just stuff that should not be missed. Now you can take e7. Take e7, rook b8, bishop f8, queen to c8. How do you guard f8? I think now you break through on the back rank. Okay, you just take the rook now for sure. If rook takes, check, and then black gets mated. Okay, so e5, knight d5. Come back to hit the queen first, then you kill the knight, then you push the queen off of the e8 square, because if you try to take e7 and check on the back rank, black plays rook e8 or queen e8 to block. So you kick the queen off of e8, then you have the back rank problems, and you win material. Yeah, tough puzzle, tough positions. Did he play this way in the game? I'm not 100% sure, but let me see. Rook b2 at the start is still decent, but e5 is the way to go, and then rook to b2 is the way to go. What if queen a3 right at the start? I'm kind of curious. Rook b8's nice. Rook b8, and then you have the intermezzo taking e8, and then you take c1. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, tough session. We're in the advanced section. I mean, we're only getting through about 30 to 40 puzzles per day just based on the difficulty level. But yeah, we're grinding it out. I think a lot of the times when you're solving especially very difficult puzzles, I probably would say this advanced section it's had some easier ones, but it's also had some very difficult ones, I will say. I think when you're solving these really difficult puzzles, I mean, obviously you'd like to get the right answer. That's obviously great to show the progress, but it's also about just like, making sure that we're thinking through tough positions and really grinding out the calculation skills, because even if we're not getting the absolute best move in every single situation, we're really flexing the calculation muscles and building them. Because even if we calculate, maybe we don't get the best move sequence, we are calculating other sequences that we do have correct. We're seeing like, okay, this doesn't work because of this reason, this works because of this reason. So it's I think it's good calculation practice, whether you're getting all the positions correct or not. This, like I said earlier, these advanced puzzles are definitely less on the pattern recognition side of things, so I do wonder about their benefit in terms of a woodpecker method style, using it for like the pattern recognition side of things. I do think the easy puzzles and the intermediate puzzles are going to be great for this pattern recognition building. I don't know, like if I had to make my own woodpecker method style of training, I would probably not include these advanced exercises in the cycle 2 and 3 and 4 type of thing. But I'm gonna do it the way that that's recommended. I'm gonna do it, the way that they recommend all the puzzles on cycle 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. But yeah, so we have 40, sorry, not 40. We have 34 puzzles remaining, I believe. Let me confirm that real quick. It's 1,128 puzzles. We are going to pick up on 1,094 tomorrow. And so that should, if my math is correct, that's 34 puzzles remaining. We did 34 today, I believe, if my math is correct there too. Yeah, we started off on 1,061. 34 puzzles after that is 1,094-ish, 5-ish. we're going to pick up on 1094. So yeah, we will definitely finish tomorrow is the game plan. I mean, not even the game plan. Let's put it this way. If we don't finish tomorrow, there's a problem. I do have something in the afternoon, but it's further off in the afternoon. Hopefully, we should finish tomorrow. Let's put it that way. I do have a student at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and technically, if we were to do the same length of training today, we would actually cut into that lesson. I wonder if we should do a few more today. I wonder if we should get to just 1100, that way we only have 28 tomorrow. Because I do have something at 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. I don't have anything in the afternoon today. I do have maybe we can do another 15 to 20 minutes and try to knock out another 5. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do up to 1100. Mainly because I don't want to run the risk tomorrow of not finishing the whole thing. I want to finish the course tomorrow for sure. That is 100% the goal. Let's do another 5. I'll do 5 more and go from there. And I'll pause off once we get to 1100. Let's do it that way. So let's knock out these next 4 or 5, and then we'll be finished for today. That way there'll only be 28 tomorrow. Okay. Our rook is hit. C4 is an option. Rook takes d7, then c4 is an option. Rook to b4 is actually a pretty good looking option. Because the knight is also pinned. If the knight takes on b4, we have queen takes d7 and we mate. Rook to b4, queen has to go to f5, and then we play g4 and trap the queen, I think. If we go to b4 and they take with the queen on b4, we take back, they take the rook on c7, queen to d6 looks sufficiently crushing. King can go to d8, bishop a5, rook c8, knight d4. I think black is getting rolled over there. So I think it's rook b4. Wow, not rook b4. Why not rook b4? Okay. Okay. Rook b4 looks good, but apparently it's not best. Maybe you take d7, then rook b4. That looks like it could work too. Take up the bishop, king takes, then rook b4 since the knight's pinned. Queen has to go to f5, and then g4 traps the queen. I think you do it this way then. Okay. I wonder why rook b4... Let's see. Rook b4 at the start, it says queen takes, bishop takes, knight takes. It says knight to d2 is winning for white. Oh, queen to d6, I guess there is queenside castling, which is annoying. Okay, this is better for white, but I can understand this move order being a lot cleaner. Okay, had the idea, just a different move order. Have to continue being precise. Okay, 5 more. I mean, rook takes c3 and knight to d5. These feel like first instincts. But then where's the knockout blow? Rook takes c3. If queen takes c3, we trade the queens. We play knight e4. White... Well, actually, hold on. We're up a piece in the starting position, right? So I think as long as we don't allow queen h3 and queen h8 mate, we should be better. Like, if we go knight to d5, I'm a little bit bothered by by queen h3, or knight takes d5 then queen h3. We might just be getting mated there. So I think we almost have to take on c3. I think we almost have to take on c3. If the queen takes on c3, we trade queens. We play knight e4. Black is better there for sure, no question. If the pawn takes on c3, then we have a free move to play knight d5, bishop a3, knight e4 maybe at the right time. I think I take on c3 almost by necessity. Okay, bishop to d3 I had not anticipated. Fair enough, fair enough. White wants to play queen h3 and queen h8. That's kind of the ticking time bomb that's going on here. If we go knight d5, queen h3, I think we get mated. I don't think we have time to play f5 or f6 there or something. Maybe we do. Maybe we can play f5. Queen h7, king f7, g6. No, we get mated there for sure. Yeah. Bishop a3 or something weird. But then they play queen h3 and we still face mate threats. Rook a3, queen h3. What are we doing here? There's no great checks. There's not really that many great threats as far as I can tell. Nothing that's as fast as white's threat of queen h3 to h8 mate. If they get to play queen h3, we could try king f8, but they take the knight and then we get mated as far as I can tell. Or we lose material for sure. I wonder if we can go rook c5 or something. I don't feel like we have the time to do it, though. No, we don't. Do we have the time? Do we have the time for that? Maybe we do. Because if queen h3, king f8, pawn takes f6, bishop takes f6, pawn takes, our king gets the escape square on e7, but we're not ahead. We're not really ahead anything at that point. We're ahead 2 pieces right now. We can definitely give up, you know, something in this position if we need to, but... So maybe knight g4, queen h3, knight h6, pawn takes h6, and then g6, and maybe that ends up working? Nope. What do we do? Vishy Anand in black shoes. Very strong player. Very fast player in his younger days is how I understand it. I don't think we can make any threat on the king or on the queen side quick enough. We can take d3 if we wanted to, but I don't think that really solves our problems. It just takes back with the rook or the queen, or with the rook probably, and then we're still having all the same exact threats. Maybe it helps, I don't know. Maybe we take d3 and then play knight g4 to h6. Do we do that? Take, knight g4, knight h6. Okay, so you take d3 first. I was thinking knight g4 to h6 without the capture on d3. Apparently bishop a4 also works. Ah, bishop a4 is cool, because if queen h3, I guess you take on c2 or something? I'm not sure what's going on with that one. Okay, so b takes c3, knight d5, take. The bishop controls h3. Ah, that's very nice. Queen takes d5, queen h3 is bad. Okay, I understand that. Queen takes here, trade, and knight e4. Knight e4 here is simply winning for black. Okay, got that correct. I wonder if rook takes d3's how necessary it is here. I was thinking knight g4, queen h3, knight h6, takes at g6. Yeah, but the difference is he gets to get rid of the rook. I guess we can kind of kamikaze the rook for something. And then go knight h5 here. Knight h5. Knight g4 no longer works. I would think that black is doing fine here, but apparently knight h5 is better. After pawn takes, knight h5 is also working. So what's going on with knight h5 here? I guess the idea is that the rook isn't gonna be, the rook's gonna be in front of the queen. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the rook is gonna be in front of the queen. We offer the trade of queens, and now queen h3 doesn't work because of queen e1 checkmate. But it says white's winning here. Oh, okay, it's the computer glitching out. Okay, anyways. Okay, just a few more, just a few more. F6 is first instinct here. And then after pawn takes, you do some kind of bishop takes h7, queen h5 check, queen g4, some kind of attack on the king side. Oh, f6, pawn takes, queen g4, king h8, knight f5. Pawn takes, queen takes, how does he guard h7? Okay, I think that's the mate. Check. Oh, okay. This works, but something else is better. Queen h5 first, I guess? I don't know. Or bishop takes, maybe it is this order of moves. Check. Rook h3, no, not rook h3, interesting. Why not rook h? Oh, rook h3, there's knight e4. Probably bishop here to threaten queen to g4. No. Queen g4 first, then a rook h3. Or knight f5. Maybe knight f5 now. Rook h3. Pawn takes f6 feels weird, helping the queen get to a better square. Bishop h6, he just takes the bishop, or he just takes the bishop there. Or rook g8. What's better? What's better? I don't think we take f6. Bishop g5 or something weird? I don't know. Bishop g5, interesting. It says also full points for queen g4 check. Oh, my idea of knight f5 doesn't work because there's knight takes d3, I will say. If the king moves, you can also do this and white wins. But taking here, apparently this bishop g5 move kind of breaks through the king side. Okay. Couple more. I think knight e7 check wins the exchange, because if bishop takes e7, we mate on g7, and if rook takes e7, I mean, we just take back and we're up the exchange. But there might be something better. Also, if rook takes e7, pawn takes, black takes on d4 with check, then e7. That's actually bad. Knight e7 is not good. Pawn takes knight is black's main threat. Rook takes g6, knight takes g6. I don't think we have a great follow-up there. Knight f6 check, bishop takes, rook takes d6. Probably white's in decent shape, but I don't think we're winning. What do we do? Bishop takes f5, forces pawn, e takes f5, but again, I don't think we gain anything out of that. Oh, what are we doing? I wish I had another rook on h3 so I could take g6, knight takes, queen takes, pawn takes, rook h8, king f7. There'd be a perpetual check there at least. But of course, the game rooks don't teleport. What are we doing? If our knight wasn't being threatened, I feel like we could go h4, h5 and just break through. But if we go h4, he takes our knight, and I don't really think we want to lose the knight on d5. So you could play like bishop takes f5, e takes f5, then h4, but then he takes on d6, and I don't think we have any follow-up there, really. What's the idea? What's the idea? Could play rook e1. Actually, rook e1 looks very reasonable, because it does pin the pawn on e6. Rook e1, if he takes the knight, we take their rook, and then we mate on g7. So rook e1 looks like a very good starting off move, because it at least keeps our knight held in place. And I think that, yeah, so rook e1's good. Losing the d6 pawn is not the end of the world. Black is still not making any super big threats, because the e-pawn is still pinned. Now we can play bishop takes f5, because again the e-pawn is pinned. I think we take here now. And then I think we can somehow crash through. Bishop takes g6, knight takes g6, pawn to f5. Looks very good, I think. Take, push, there we go. And we're threatening to take on g6, e takes f5, we trade rooks and mate on g7, and if queen takes, we get mate on g7 as well. Okay, so I'm happy with that one. Took a while, but did get the right answer eventually. Okay, first of all, we are ahead 2 pawns, and they're connected pawns on the queen side. In some regards, I feel like we could play knight e3 and just win the endgame with those pawns, but there's almost certainly something stronger. Like, what if we go b5? b5 would be my other instinct here. And then we're just pushing the pawns. I don't really see why that would be bad. If e3, I guess black could play e3. And then it gets a little tricky. Then it's a little tricky, I will say. Well, no, then we would just take on e3. I'm sorry. b5, e3, we just take it. So what's wrong with b5? If black plays rook c8 to d8, we go c6. They take, we take, they take. We play c7. Then he has king to d7. We take the rook, and then he plays e3. That's not good. That's not good for us. b5, rook to d8. c6, rook takes. Oh, sorry, b5, rook to d8. We have knight to c7 check. We have a knight to c7 check. If he takes, we take the rook on d8. If he plays king e7, then it's still kind of awkward, though. Because if we trade the rooks and then move the knight back, he takes the knight. So then we have trade rooks and then b6. But then he still takes the knight and then promotes. Okay. b5, rook c d8. Doesn't seem fantastic for us. So maybe it's not b5. Is there anything else to think about? c6, we just lose the pawn with check, which is not good. Knight e3 or knight c3 seem reasonable, but I don't think they are winning. Could be g4. g4 actually looks pretty good. If we can break apart, if we can get rid of the e4 pawn, then if we can like take f5, play knight e3 check, get rid of e4, then all black's counterplay disappears. So g4 actually looks really good. Yeah. Now the question is, after rook to g7, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we both found the move at the same time. Very nice. Now the question, I think knight to e3 now. And then you take e4. Once the e4 pawn is gone, then black has no counterplay, and white's completely winning. Okay. I thought about b5. I thought all of this worked. But black does have king to d7 and then e3. Okay, I calculated that didn't work. I'm happy about that. I also didn't think that this was winning for white. Black gets the rook a little too active. Okay, I was correct about that. Yeah, g4's... Once we realize the power of the e4 pawn is like black's only way of getting counterplay, then g4 and undermining the pawn becomes much more of a reality. White apparently won the game this way. Even though king to e7, I guess king e7, f5, and then you check on e6 and win the queen. Okay. What? 2 more puzzles? 1 more puzzle? This is almost certainly rook takes a3. I don't think there's any other move to think about. Rook takes a3, pawn takes, queen takes. I guess white plays rook to d2. And then some kind of rook c8, knight c4, b2. Like, there's no way that white survives this. Oh, wow. It's not the best move. Maybe it's rook c8 on move 1. That might be cleaner. It's probably rook c8 on move 1, and then rook takes a3. No, still not rook takes a3. Wow. Knight c4. Knight c4 looks pretty good, too. And then now probably rook takes a3. Or knight takes a3. I guess he's threatening us to take the f pawn and then promote, right? So we need to be still precise. I would take on g6 with the f pawn, and then there's no more back rank mate threats. So probably I'd play f takes g6. No? Okay. There's still really no back rank mate threats if we do it. We have the rook protecting f8, so it's probably something... Wow. I'm just completely spitballing moves here. White's not threatening any... He is threatening to take and then promote, which pulls the rook off the c file, allows the king to escape. I think that's kind of their idea. I don't really know why... I guess f takes, there's queen e6 check or something weird. Or f6. Maybe f takes g6, f6 is kind of tricky. Okay, let's be precise. Let's be precise. It's not rook takes a3 or knight takes a3, so it's not a check. I also don't think it's knight to d2 or queen takes e4. Those moves make no sense. Rook a7, white takes the rook on a7. Is it h takes g6? Maybe it's that. That way you free up the h7 square. Maybe it's h takes g6. Yeah. H takes g6, and then you take on a3. And the big difference is you have the h7 square available. You don't have to go to h8. Now f8 is not a check. I guess they can make a knight. White could make a knight here, but I don't think you have to take the knight. I think you go king g8 or something weird. I'm actually kind of curious. What if I... Yeah, it says white's best move is to try making a knight. Oh, you don't want to go to g8 because this check is bad, but you can go here... And then here, I guess? And I think white kind of runs out of... I guess this is good enough. Okay, I think that... I think if they make the knight and we go to... and we play rook takes f8, I guess this is good enough. You're down 2 pieces, but white's... No, it says white's winning now. Oh, it's the computer freaking out. I don't know. Let's try refreshing. It says you can just take on f8 with the rook. Assume that was a knight, obviously. You know, it has to be a check. And now the computer says white's winning. I don't know. The computer's freaking out or something. King h8, knight g6, king h7, knight f8. It pretty much says you have to take on f8 at some point. I think you take on f8, and then you just mate on a1 or a2 or something in the near future. It's pretty hard for white to stop. Even if they go bishop d4 to cover the a1 square, you can still play rook a1 check, bishop takes, check on a2, then mate on c2. Okay, so now we are through 1,099 puzzles. We will start off on number 1,100 tomorrow. And that means we will only have 28 puzzles left to do. 28 is definitely doable in, you know, about 2.5 hours or something like that. So for sure, we will finish off the rest of the 28 remaining puzzles during tomorrow's session. Thanks for hanging out today. This is the actual final goodbye. I'm not going to extend it a second time. But yeah, thanks again, Thomas, for hanging out, solving the puzzles with me. Torty Ritz, giving the strong emojis there. I think that Shadow Blaze, Luke, they were in here earlier. Ernesto was here for a bit. Yep, so I will be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll finish up the last 28 puzzles tomorrow. We'll be done with cycle number 1, and then we will go from there. All right, thanks for hanging out, guys. See you tomorrow. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.